My toxic neighbor claims that he can make as much noise as he wants by revving up his obnoxiously loud Mustang all day, every day. And even though we've desperately told them to please quiet down, these neighbors refuse to comply, forcing me to get some revenge on them in a way that they truly will never forget. Here's what happened. So last spring, my old neighbor, who was a saint, sold her house and moved away. And the people that moved in were awful. The guy, who we'll call Pete, owns some sort of new black Mustang that sounds like it has no muffler, and he revs it up and down the subdivision streets in the evening, literally 5 days a week, when a lot of people, myself included, sit on the back porch and watch TV during the summer. It is relentless. This guy also drives up and down the state highway that is on the other side of my house, doing the same thing but even louder, because there he can drive 55 miles an hour. And by the way, you can hear it for miles. On top of that, he has friends over regularly in the backyard, and they sit there on the weekends and some weeknights literally revving up the car. It truly is so loud that you cannot do anything but wait for him to be done. There was a big Facebook conversation in the homeowners association group, and a bunch of neighbors politely asked him not to do this. Well, what was Pete's exact response? He said, "I pay a lot of money for this house. I'll do what I want in my own yard," while also saying, "The streets are public." Well, I didn't like that, so here's what I did next. For a little bit of context, our subdivision has about 150 houses on about 300 acres. So basically, it's very big. Most of the properties in this subdivision are between 1 to 4 acres in size, with me having a 3-acre corner. Due to an agreed-upon land split sale 10 years ago between the homeowners association, all neighbors within the vicinity, and the former owners, my next-door neighbor's house is on the smallest piece of property in the subdivision, sitting at maybe half an acre. Well, I know that from 15 years of living here, anytime I have a fire on the side of the yard next to Pete's house, the smoke is guaranteed to travel in the direction of Pete's house. Now, I know this because I couldn't ever have a fire when my old neighbor was outside, as it would literally fill her backyard with smoke if ever the wood had even a hint of moisture in it. So I moved my fire pit about a dozen years ago to the other side of my house and towards the road so that I could be a good neighbor. But you know what? Pete letting me know that he wouldn't quit making noises reminded me that I just loved having my fire pit right in the middle of my backyard. And it was here that my revenge started to take place, as Pete literally regretted ever messing with me or the neighborhood. It took me a single weekend to dig up the pavers and blocks, move them back to my preferred spot, and get myself a fire going in my new fire pit. And so at this point, I just needed to wait until Pete had people over. And you know what? I made sure the inaugural fire was a good one. Pete had friends over, it was a nice day, so that's when I started the fire. I got it just about started, and then I added all the wettest, grossest wood that I could find. Well, about 10 minutes later, Pete and all of his friends were visibly upset by the stench, so all of them went inside. They came back out a little later, so I just added more wet, nasty wood. And just like that, they went in again. I kept that up the entire day, and then I added a bunch of grass clippings to keep it going overnight. The next day comes around and it's still smoldering. And guess what? It still smells awful. I put out a Facebook post on the Homeowners Association website that let people know I'd be continuing to utilize my fire pit as often as possible, so they could bring me their lawn scraps. I had about 20 people respond in a few hours, saying their clippings were all mine. And you know what? I kept that fire going. My dogs are good alarms, and they rush outside anytime anybody is in Pete's backyard. So I would hear the dogs scramble, go outside, and add more clippings. After about 3 weeks of this happening, Pete and his wife came out and very kindly asked me what was going on with the fire pit. She politely informed me that her hair would smell like campfire if she went into her backyard for any amount of time, and they could smell it coming into their house through their ductwork. He said I was making it hard for him to enjoy his backyard with his friends. They then asked me if I could ease back with the fire because I probably didn't know that it was impacting so much of their home life. And this honestly was the moment I was waiting for. I looked at him and his wife, and I said that it was clear that sometimes we didn't recognize how big of an effect something could have on our neighbors until they told us about it. But then I said, as objectively as possible, that I normally live by the same I'll do what I want with my yard thought process as Pete does, and that I have a right to enjoy my yard. At this point, I looked Pete dead in the eyes, and I said to him, "And I know you support that because of how the conversation concluded about your car, right, Pete?" He looked at me like I had scratched his favorite CD. He absolutely knew what I was doing, and when his wife looked at him, it just finally dawned on her. She said she gets it and that we won't be hearing the Mustang anymore, and all I said was thanks. I then took a gamble and I put the fire out right then and there, and you know what? It was the right call. I haven't talked to them much ever since then, and I'm not too concerned about that because I haven't heard that Mustang ever since then. So all in all, this was a really good case of getting revenge on people who absolutely deserved it. Wow, you've got to have some serious guts to sit there and be like, oh, I'm gonna do whatever I want. This is my Mustang and I'm gonna make as much noise as I want whenever I want. And it's like, dude, are you sure you want to play that game? Because because the people in this neighborhood have been here longer than you, and I guarantee you they're gonna get back at you in a way that you're not expecting. And this is the perfect example of that. This guy not only makes a horrible first impression as a neighbor, but he also decides to like poke the bear and be like, oh yeah, what are you gonna do about it? So truly, to the original poster, I love the way you handled this. This really is super inspiring because this goes to show you that you absolutely do not have to put up with anybody's garbage. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for supposedly kicking a pregnant woman out of her seat, even though I was trying to claim my seat on a train that she was taking? Because right now I feel really guilty and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened a few hours ago and I've only just calmed down because I hate conflict. So basically, I was doing a long travel day of about 5 hours and I decided to book my train in advance to ensure that I had a reserved seat. When I get on the train, a woman is in my seat. So I politely inform her that I think that's my seat and I show her my ticket and I ask her to move. She checks her ticket and says, well, I must have sit in the wrong seat, and then puts her head down. I say, well, it's my seat, so could you please let me sit in it? Now at this point, her partner sitting opposite of this lady starts speaking at me in what I perceive to be an aggressive tone. He suggests that I find another seat, which is not possible because it's very busy, but I say to him, look, I booked this seat. There are no other seats available in the carriage. He then raises his voice at me and says to me, well, someone's in our seat and she's pregnant. I then say that I understand and that I have a heart defect, which is true, and said that everyone has their own medical issues and reasons for standing for long periods of time and why that might be difficult. Now, it's this moment where I might be the jerk. I ask him to not speak to me in an aggressive tone and that I will make a complaint. Well, once I said that, he then starts swearing at me, and I again ask him to stop. Eventually, the woman gets up and allows me to sit there, and he continues to berate me, saying that he hopes I feel good for myself and that I'm quiet now that I have my seat, when really I just stopped engaging as I felt there was no point. One of the other men who was sat beside him offers that him and his partner sit in the seats opposite me, as this is a table seat, and at this point he sits his partner down and then laughs at me and points in my face. Eventually, when the ticket inspector comes around, they are asked to move to their assigned seats, and she asks if I'm okay as another passenger had made a complaint on my behalf. But even so, was I the jerk in this situation? Should I have just left them alone as she was pregnant? And did I in any way escalate the situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk. You did everything right. Here's the thing, on public transportation, especially when you reserve a seat, that seat is yours until the end of the ride, and not this guy or anybody else has any say in the matter. You literally just want to sit down. You didn't want to stand. You didn't want to have to go sit somewhere else. You wanted to sit there and you paid to sit there. And just because this lady's pregnant or this guy's getting pissed off is in no way justification for them to take that seat. And also, this guy is such a coward, because if his partner really was this pregnant, then why didn't he stand up and let her sit down? Like, this guy's an idiot. He would rather have you move away instead of, I don't know, finding their own seat and going there. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong, as these people truly were completely toxic. An entitled Karen comes back to my store after she made such a fuss the last time she was here after she didn't get exactly what she wanted, because now she's come back with a vengeance, treating me and my coworkers in such a way that honestly is so disrespectful. Here's what happened. Okay, so 3 days ago, I had this entitled Karen demanding that I walk with her to her cart and load her bags into her car for her. I explained to her that we do not provide that service in our store, and she then went off and cussed me out and told me that I would never amount to anything in life and that I would always be an assistant manager and not a real manager. Well, I was working at a different location and she came in and I refused to serve her. She begged and begged me to serve her, claiming that she didn't do anything to me, but I reminded her how she treated me that day. She went on and on about how she did treat me horrible that day, but she was having a bad day too as her husband was in the hospital, and stated that regardless I should serve her. But again, I told her no. Well, at this point, she crossed her arms and refused to move aside or leave, and demanded that I call the police for her. She told me that she was best friends with the police and they would arrest me for not serving her. At this point, I laughed at her because I know that was not going to happen. She then asked me if I was going to pass up the opportunity to get a total of $100 from her, and I said, you know what? Yes, because I told her that we get customers every single day spending up to $100. She then asked to see my employee card, which I do not have. And by the way, she believed that all retail employees had a special card with all of their info on it, and she just wanted to see mine. Now, when she said this, I just laughed, and I told her that we don't get employee cards. She then demanded my full name and my phone number. She said she was going to make sure I got fired and that I would never get another job ever again. But still, I told her no. She then demanded to see the store manager, but he wasn't there, so she demanded that I get her another work worker to serve her. Now, my cashier was outside on her break, and so I told her that we're not going to serve her. Well, after I said that, she actually went outside to bother my cashier, and she was trying to convince her to serve her. But thankfully, my cashier told her no, that's not going to happen. She then told my cashier that she apparently filed a police report against me from the other time that she was in our store, and she then came back in standing by her cart, and I was serving another customer. Now, at this point, she started to cry and was telling the customer that she did nothing wrong and that she was just a poor old innocent lady that I refused to help for no reason. I told her that she wasn't innocent, and I explained how she treated me, and the customer agreed with me and said I had every right to not serve her. At that point, I was starting to realize that she wasn't going to leave, so I called 911, but as soon as she saw me on the phone explaining to the dispatcher what was happening, she finally left. And you know what? I was surprised that she did that, because I thought that she wanted to stick around and talk to her friends, who she seriously claims are the police. Okay, so this is a story that we covered the other day on this channel, and my god, this lady just keeps getting worse and worse. The first time she was in that store, she was acting like a complete nut job, but now it's clear that she's like kicking it up another level, and that is honestly so weird, because just look at the way she's acting. Like, does she have no shame in the way that she's acting towards everybody around her? I will literally never understand why people act like this. So yeah, that Karen's crazy, and I really hope she never comes back. And hopefully the police get involved, because her behavior is truly unhinged. Am I the jerk for avoiding my mom after she told me to suck it up when I broke my fingers at the gym? Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I was at the gym where a heavy weight fell onto 3 of my fingers on my left hand. I was in such severe pain that I thought I was going to pass out. While I was sobbing, I called my mom, and it's important to know that I'm at college and I'm far away from home. I told her that I thought I broke my fingers and that I wanted to go to an urgent care. Now, my mom has never been empathetic for physical injuries or mental health issues. When she heard me, she told me to suck it up and rest. So I figured I would wait for a while. I mean, who knows? She could be right. Now, as a side note, I feel the need to mention that my fingers did not look deformed. So, other than bruising and swelling, I was unsure if they were broken or not. While I was waiting, my roommate came home and saw the state that I was in. She took one look at my hand and assured me that we needed to go to urgent care. Now, I didn't want to betray my mom, because she always said to never go to the ER or urgent care due to our terrible insurance. However, I went and researched the cost of an out-of-pocket x-ray at the nearest urgent care, and it was only $200, which I was willing to pay. I told my mom this, and she said, well, you better hope your finger's broken, or else I'm not going to help you pay for anything. So I was under a weird circumstance where I hoped my fingers were broken for the sake of saying, well, I told you so to my mom. I finally went to the urgent care and I got an x-ray, and they confirmed that both my pointer and middle fingers were broken, and that I may need surgery if not healed properly. When I called back my mom later that day and told her the news, she basically laughed at me and told me that I should be glad that they're broken. Well, 3 weeks have gone by and I've not spoken to her since. She has texted me and asked for updates on my fingers, but I feel conflicted on why she's suddenly acting like she cares when she clearly didn't in the first place. She's also not someone you can easily share your feelings with, so I'm not sure how to go about our next conversation. Should I just ignore it, or should I try to bring it up with her? Because right now I don't know what to do. Oh wow, your mom is really not a nice person. Seriously, who in their right mind would be like, oh, I really hope your fingers are broken. If not, I'm not gonna pay for any of this. It's like, dude, are you kidding me right now? Wouldn't you want your kid to be in good shape and not have 3 broken fingers on their hand? Like seriously, this lady sucks so much. So no, you're not the jerk for avoiding your mom, because I think if I was in your shoes, I would have done the same thing, because her behavior is unbelievably toxic, and you did not deserve that treatment in the slightest. An entitled couple next door to my hotel room refused to keep down the noise, despite me asking them politely to please keep it down, as I have work in the morning at 5:30. But after they kept me up until 1 o'clock in the morning, I decided to get some revenge by making it so they would never get any sleep anytime soon. Here's what happened. A few years ago, I was staying in a hotel room in suburban Detroit. I was a Navy reservist on my drill weekend. On Saturday night, this couple shows up in the adjoining room with a buddy and their probably 6-year-old kid. I think nothing of it until it's about 10 o'clock p.m. and 2 more people show up. And now, at this point, it's a party. They were being obnoxious, so I knock on the door and I ask them to keep it down and that I have work in the morning. Well, they responded in a way that honestly really pissed me off. They said to me, "We're not even being loud. How can you hear us?" I respond by saying, "Well, bro, I'm in the room next to you. There's a door between our rooms. I can hear you clearly." They then just said, "Yeah, okay," and then closed the door in my face. 45 minutes later, they're just as loud as they had been, so I call the front desk. I then hear the neighbor's phone ring, and once he hangs up, he says, "Oh, if he thinks we're being loud now, just wait till later." They then continue to party and are obviously being loud on purpose in spite of me. Eventually, I got tired enough and I fell asleep at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I then woke up at 5:30 to get ready for work. Well, Well, this is where my petty revenge comes into play. I plug the alarm clock into the socket near the adjoining door. I put the speaker against the door they can't open. I put the radio between stations. I crank up the volume to max, and I set the alarm for 5 minutes after I leave the room. And honestly, I can picture them panicking and being furious at not being able to stop it. And I truly would have given anything in the world to see their reaction. I love this story so much because trust me, I think we've all been there, where we hate our neighbors and they're making a lot of noise or they're disturbing us in some kind of way. You really did the right thing by saying, hey, I'm trying to get some sleep, I've got work in the morning, can you please keep it down? But for them to come back at you and basically double down and be like, oh, you think we're being loud now, just wait till later. Like, that's so toxic. Like, dude, just be a reasonable human being, turn down the volume, shut up just a little bit, and then everybody gets to go to work in the morning and be fine. So truly, I love the way you got back at these people because in my opinion, they absolutely deserve it. My entitled, idiotic managers refuse to uphold store policy, leaving me quite literally alone in trying to figure all of this out. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work for a small, local, family-owned pet supply store. The managers there are very young and have a difficult time upholding store policies. So what happens is the store manager or owner will send out messages telling store associates that we are not supposed to allow customers to stack store coupons or discounts. Now, the unwritten store policy is only one store discount per transaction. Now, it seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, that is until the customer walks up to the register with a fistful of coupons, and I say, I'm sorry, I can't apply all of these coupons per our store policy. And then the customer will say something like, well, when did that go into effect? And I say, it's been a policy since I started working here. I then call for the manager on duty, and I explain to her what's happening. Well, without even saying a word to the customer, the manager on duty says just to give it to him. Now, luckily, I wasn't the actual cashier on this transaction, and I was only called over to help the cashier apply one of the 3 discounts that she had given the customer. I walked the cashier through the last discount, and then the customer leaves. I then explained to her that our store manager would have never allowed that transaction ever. The following morning, I give my store manager a copy of the receipt, and I tell her I tried to stop the transaction, but it was completely overruled. And the store manager acknowledges that my understanding of the store policy and how long it's been in effect is correct. She also states that everything about this transaction was completely wrong. She then proceeds to tell me how supposedly the customer came back after his transaction to find another manager on duty to complain about my attitude. I made 3 separate attempts to have a conversation with the store manager regarding the alleged complaint, but every time I tried to talk to her, she literally walked away from me. And by the time my shift was over, I was beyond pissed. Fast forward to yesterday, and there is now a notice posted on the registers facing the customer explaining only 1 store discount per transaction is allowed, and that customers are being instructed to talk to a manager if there are questions. And I'm just sitting there like, are you kidding me right now? This has happened to me so many times. I just don't know what to do anymore. I've had so many conversations with the store manager and owner about this particular issue that I am befuddled as to why I'm still having these conversations 2.5 years later. What should I do? Okay, I've been in this scenario, and honestly, the best thing that I did was find another job. You know you have a bad manager or a bad owner when instead of following their own store policy, they throw you under the bus by making you look bad. Or they don't even follow the policy themselves and you're the only one doing it. And even worse is if you don't follow the policy, then you're in trouble, but they can run around doing whatever they want whenever they want. And it's like, yeah, you're basically being thrown under the bus no matter what you do. And that is so unfair. It really is not fair at all. So truly, I hope this works out for you because this really does sound like a nightmare, as this is not a scenario that you deserve in the slightest. Today at my job, for the first time ever, I was faced with a problem that I did not know how to solve. And this has now really shaken me up to my core, and I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So at the grocery store I work at for almost 9 years now, we have an instant scratch ticket machine, and it didn't print someone's ticket, and my brain literally froze for a minute. Have you ever had one of those times where you sort of know what to do, but you're not entirely confident and you're too afraid to do that thing? So you call someone for assurance because you worry you'll make things worse? Because that's what was going through my head. Anyway, I checked to make sure that no money was stuck or tickets were stuck, and from what I could see, they weren't. So I thought to just take the ticket that she wanted, but as I'm not the manager nor the supervisor, I really didn't want to screw something up as I was by myself and I was really panicking. Anyway, so I just gave the woman the tickets after getting an okay from a manager to do so. And again, I had never done this particular thing before, and I didn't want to screw something up. And I explained to her that I just wanted to wait for an okay from my manager, that giving her the ticket was fine, and the woman just kept getting irritated with me. I then told her over and over again, thank you for your patience, and I apologize for the inconvenience. Anyways, I gave her her tickets, and she grabbed them out of my hand and walked out the door, even after I apologized multiple times times for the inconvenience. And now I'm anticipating her possibly calling to complain about me, or that I screwed something up even more. And I'm anxious over possibly getting in trouble, or I'm worried my boss will think I'm an idiot or something like that. I know it's probably lame or sad to care so much about a part-time job, but I'm worried I'll come to work tomorrow to a complaint, or people at work thinking that I'm stupid. I really hate how anxious the part-time job I've been at for almost 8 years can still make me feel. But it was so frustrating, and the woman was just standing there while I was trying to figure out what to do, and I felt bad bothering other coworkers who were at home at 7:30 at night. What should I do? Honestly, the second you got that approval from a manager is the second you can no longer feel guilty about this. Because if you really do have a complaint or any kind of like feedback of like, oh, you did this wrong, then I would point to my manager and be like, wait, they said I should do it this way. And then that way you can have your bases covered. Because honestly, in my opinion, there's nothing worse than having a manager who tells you to do it one way and then will willingly throw you under the bus and be like, I never showed you how to do it like that. So the fact that you ask somebody for help, in my opinion, is like the smartest decision to make. Because that way you can be sure for a fact that you're doing it correctly. An entitled Karen demands that her internet gets fixed right away. And despite there being a dangerous hurricane currently going on, this entitled Karen won't take no for an answer. Here's what happened. So first, let me give you some background. I work for one of the big internet service providers here in the United States, and I take incoming calls from people having issues with their internet as well as their phone. Throughout my time with this company, we'll call it ISP for short, I have unsurprisingly encountered many entitled people over the phone. However, some truly do tend to rise above the others. To get you a setting for this one, this occurred a few years ago during Hurricane Florence that swept through South Carolina. Now, I may have been naive at the time, but I figured that during the storm, we wouldn't get many calls from people who were actually in path of the storm. Rather, I was expecting more calls from people who were on the outskirts, who might experience some issues. However, much to my surprise, the vast majority of people who would call in were those in the storm as it was landing. This story details one of those calls when I dealt with one of the most entitled Karens I've ever had to deal with. So I answer the call just like normal, and I say, "Thank you for calling ISP. How can I assist you today?" The entitled Karen says, "Yes, I am calling because all my services are out. What kind of business is ISP running?" I respond back and say, "I'm terribly sorry to hear that. We definitely want to get this resolved for you as soon as possible. What's your address so I can look up your account?" This entitled Karen gives me her address, and I instantly know it's due to the storm that is literally just landing on the coast. I look up the account just to confirm, and indeed they are in an outage. I try to explain by saying, "Well, ma'am, it seems to be you are in an outage due to the hurricane that's going on." "I don't care about your excuses. I just want my stuff fixed right now. My babies need something to do to keep their minds off of what's going on outside." At this point, I was dumbfounded by what she was saying. I said, "Ma'am, there's a hurricane going through your area as we speak, and with the damages it is causing, we do expect loss of service. I am so sorry that this is happening, but there's nothing we can do right now." Despite the fact that this Karen was in the middle of a hurricane, she simply would not accept the truth. "This is absolute garbage. You need to send someone out here right now." At this point, I needed some clarification because I asked, "Excuse me, are you actually asking us to send someone out to your home right now during a hurricane?" She says, "Don't make me repeat myself. My babies need their internet and TV to work. What are we even supposed to do during this?" I continue on by saying, "Well, ma'am, we are not sending someone out to you. There is a state of emergency and people were supposed to evacuate. We will not be sending someone into your area until the storm has passed." The entitled Karen then claims that they already did evacuate and that they're currently staying at their second home, which is a little bit more inland. So at this point, I'm thinking I had looked up the wrong account, even though she had given me that address. So I asked for the other address. Her second home is right on the shore, and the one she is staying in is only about 30 minutes inland. So I said, "Ma'am, I see that you are only 30 minutes away from the shore. This is still an area we expected to more than likely be out since the hurricane was going to be hitting your area. Once again, we cannot and will not be sending someone out until after the storm passes." I then put on a very stern and serious voice and said, "Ma'am, there is a hurricane." At this point, I heard silence for a moment on the other side, thinking I had finally gotten my point across. However, this entitled Karen said the most entitled and honestly dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. "Well, there may be a hurricane going on, but that is not my problem. That is ISP's problem, and you need to send someone out here right now. If you don't send someone out right now, I will just have to talk to your supervisor." At this this point, I had had enough, plus she said the magic words. I gladly tell her I will get someone on the line so they can talk further. I get the call to someone in my leadership team, and lo and behold, we didn't send out some poor guy just to try and fix her services in the middle of a hurricane. This original poster had a lot more patience than I would have had. This entitled Karen was actually demanding that someone would drive out in the middle of a hurricane just to fix her internet, as if she's some super VIP person. How out of touch with reality do you have to be to allow that to be your reaction when you don't get your way? I mean, that's unbelievable. Really crazy stuff, and good for this original poster for laying down the law. I am stuck choosing between my girlfriend and my dream career, and I simply don't know what to do. So my girlfriend is 21 years old, and I'm 22, and we've been together for almost 2 years. Through the relationship, she has made it very apparent that she wants to move from North America to Europe. She even had ideas on where to live and what career she could pursue when she gets there. And personally, I love that idea. I've always wanted to move to Europe and live there. So as I figured out my life goals and what career I wanted to go into, I knew it would need to be one that had options available in Europe. So I decided on a career that I'm very passionate about and have started my schooling. But this is the part where things get thrown into a loop. My girlfriend decided she wants to move 3 hours away from where we are now and buy a house and start her own business in a small town. I am all for her starting a business and following her dreams, but this is a very sharp turn from what she previously wanted. The area she's moving to has nowhere that I can use my degree or even find a job in the field I'm currently studying. She suggested that I just move up there with her anyways and work for her business. And I honestly don't know what to do now. I love her and I really did see a future with her, but now she's asking me to basically give up on my career and schooling just so I can work for her. This is the first time in my life I have found a career that I'm excited for. This field is something I really want to pursue, but it feels like I can either have my career or be with her. She is set on the area for where she is moving and starting the business, so there is no compromising on the location. She isn't making the move for another year or two while she gets the money together, so it's not an immediate thing. But if I don't make a decision, I could just make things harder, and for lack of a better term, waste both of our time. So I guess what I'm asking here is, what should I say to her? Do I give up on my career and be with her, or follow my dreams and end the relationship? This is really bothering me, and I feel like I'm at a complete loss. I don't want her to give up on her dreams, but I also don't want to give up on mine. What should I do? This is a really tough one because obviously it sounds like you really love your girlfriend. And yeah, you want to be with her and spend some time with her. You even catered your career options to something that you could pursue while you're in Europe. That's a big deal. And you thought until very recently that that was going to be your plans, that you're going to go through school and together you're going to move to Europe. But now she took a right turn and said, nah, let's move to a small town and start a business. That is definitely very jarring. And the fact that you would be moving to a place that has no career options for you, especially in your field of study, is definitely hurtful. It seems like she did not put you in mind when it comes to the equation of moving to a small town and starting a business. She put herself first and decided, hey, this is what I want to do. And in a lot of ways, that's a little unfair for you because now you got to make this really weird decision. And so I totally get where you're coming from, and I can see where the apprehension is coming in. I think if I was in your shoes, I would talk to my girlfriend. I would say, hey, this is really not a good option for me. I would explain that I have career aspirations and goals myself, and I don't want to just give those up out of nowhere. Maybe there's some kind of middle ground that you could both work towards. I think whatever you choose to do and whatever compromise would work between the two of you, I think there's really going to need to be some kind of conversation about this, because you can't expect to just give up on your dreams all because your girlfriend suddenly says, hey, I'm moving to a small town and I'm starting a business, when your entire trajectory has been something different up until then. Because honestly, if I was in your shoes, looking back on my life, I'd be pretty upset if I gave up on my dreams just so I could pursue some girl I happen to be dating in my early 20s. I neglected the fact that my girlfriend needed some emotional support, all because I was distracted with gaming, and now I'm not sure what to do. Last night, I was playing a decently fast-paced game with a group of friends when my girlfriend, who I'm in a long-distance relationship with, messaged me about being stressed due to an assignment she was given by a company she is hoping will hire her. I messaged her back for a while trying to make her feel better, but at one point I was about to reply to one of her messages, and I got interrupted by the game and forgot to reply afterwards. After the game, I had to pick up a family member from a concert, and after which I was so tired I pretty much fell asleep right afterwards and just went to bed. This morning, she messaged me asking why I left her on red, saying how I made her realize that I'm not the person she wants to share intimate details with. I went to read the messages from last night and realized how much of an idiot idiot I had been by not really focusing on the conversation. And now I'm at a complete loss. To try and rectify the situation and to make sure this doesn't happen again, I already uninstalled the game from my PC and told my best friend I won't be playing with him for now because it simply is taking too much of my time and focus away from more important things like my girlfriend. Is there some way I could make this up to my girlfriend? I tried asking her if there was something I could do, but she understandably hasn't been reading my messages. To be clear, she needing my support isn't something that has happened super often, and usually it's been me who's needed emotional support, and she has always been there for me, which makes me feel even worse about what happened. What should I do? This is definitely a tough one, because I've been there myself where I should have been more attentive to my girlfriend's needs, but I completely missed the obvious hints, and I ended up making things worse for myself by not responding or even being involved sooner. So I totally understand where this original poster is coming from. So I think taking a step to try and limit your gaming is probably for the best. The reason being is that the original poster actually goes on to say that gaming has become such a big problem in their life. They stated that it's distracting them from doing other things like going to school and getting work done, and that they feel it's really hard for them to moderate how many times they play and how often. So if this is something that they need to limit, then I absolutely think that's a good idea. But that also begs the question of how can you gain your girlfriend's trust back? Because I think truly the issue isn't totally like, hey, you're playing games too much, but more so that you maybe are not as present in your girlfriend's emotional life as you may realize. I think if anything, just let this be a really big growing experience and push to be more involved in your girlfriend's life. And I don't think that involves any major changes in your life either. I think since you're taking a break from gaming, maybe take that time to spend your time with your girlfriend. Even if it's a long distance relationship, there's still lots of ways you can think of between the two of you that could be rewarding and beneficial to the both of you. I know what you mean when she says that she doesn't feel like she can share these things with you anymore. And I think if anything, I would just take that as a learning lesson and to gain her trust back as best you can. My girlfriend is seriously convinced that I'm faking my feelings for her to the point where she's thinking of breaking up with me, and I honestly don't know what to do. I'm a 23-year-old male, and I met my 22-year-old girlfriend last September. We met online and immediately went on a date the next day, and honestly, we hit it right off the bat. The problem came a little while after we started dating. For some backstory, I had been an obese individual my entire life all the way up until 2020. I went through a drastic transformation in a year that brought me a lot of self-confidence, where I was able to look at myself worthy of dating someone for the first time in my entire life. Before this, I never looked at myself as a potential romantic interest to someone. Hence, I had almost no experience in flirting and a very minuscule level of confidence in myself. I was often the bro around girls. After my first date with my current girlfriend in September, we started texting and calling very frequently. We grew close to each other slowly. Sometimes she tried to flirt with me in a suggestive way, but I was unable to participate fully with her. I never knew the right things to say, and I was afraid I might say something awkward to ruin the experience and the conversation. Some months later, this went on and I got better with time, being able to flirt back as well as being a better boyfriend in general in our relationship. I told her that I liked her in November, which was 2 months after we met. We were both into it and we committed to being with each other in December. But the problem is, she often told me she felt she pushed me into being more flirty in the relationship, and eventually this led her to believe that she was pushing me into the relationship. I tried my best in every possible way to reassure her that I wasn't being pushed into the relationship by any means. That even though I may have taken more time than she had liked to get used to flirting and everything else, I was fully enjoying and wanted to be a part of it. I loved her so much. Fast forward to now, and for some time, I have been feeling that she's been very distant and wasn't very interested in any kind of activities or romantic gestures together. She didn't even want to hold my hand very often and didn't want to kiss in public. She finally was able to open up to me last week. She told me that she felt that all this was being manufactured and had significantly compounded to a point where she felt repulsed from my touch, as well as my affection. She said she could not fight the internal thoughts that I was just putting on an act. She has been going through a rough patch lately, feeling in general very depressed, and this relationship trouble is no help to her either. She told me she still feels that she loves me and wants to work on this, but she has been dealing with a lot of hard times recently. I've tried to help her as best as I could. I've been supportive of her and I constantly reassure her, but none of it has worked. So now I'm here on the internet posting about this, and I don't know what to do. I have tried everything. I cannot imagine losing the love of my life to something like this. I love her with all of my heart, and I'm willing to put in whatever whatever effort it could possibly take to make sure I help her. What should I do? This is a really crazy situation because his girlfriend thinks that he's faking it. I mean, I can't imagine putting so much effort into a relationship as well as trying to show signs of affection just for them to claim that it's manufactured or fake. Like, that is so heartbreaking, so I really feel bad for this original poster. I think if anything, it sounds like your girlfriend could really benefit from some kind of therapist. Depression can really skew your view of the world, and it can literally make it seem like nobody loves you. But in reality, the boyfriend is there, and he makes it so clear that yes, I do love you and I want to be with you. So I think some professional help could really go a long way. Depression sucks and it really is not something fun to deal with, but you can deal with it. So hopefully your girlfriend can finally see that no, you do love her, and that you're not just faking it like she's assuming. My girlfriend slapped me while I was pretending to be asleep, and now I have no idea what to do. My girlfriend and I have been together for quite a while, and she recently moved into my place, but things have not been going well. We got into a very nasty fight this morning, but we worked it out and decided to apologize to each other in the afternoon. So after apologizing to one another, I thought everything was taken care of. However, she was still feeling a bit salty for the entire evening. I went to bed early because I had to wake up early while she stayed up late to watch TV. At some point in the night, she came into the room to try and sleep in bed. I heard her walking in and woke up, but for whatever reason, I pretended to be asleep because I was just planning on going back to sleep. I didn't think much of her coming into the room. And that is when out of nowhere, the slap happened. Out of absolutely nowhere, I felt the nastiest slap I've ever felt on my face. It came out of left field and I couldn't even process what happened. My reaction was pretty stupid. I woke up and said, "What is going on, babe? Was there a bug on me or something?" Yes, I know it sounds pretty stupid, but I just responded to this slap on pure instinct. She said to me, "Yeah, there was the bug." And eventually, we just kind of went back to sleep. I confronted my girlfriend the next day about her slapping me in my sleep, and I dropped the news on her that I was wide awake and that I was well aware that there absolutely was no bug on my face, and that I know for a fact she slapped me for pretty much no reason out of nowhere. So I asked her straight up, "Why did you hit me in my sleep?" She got nervous and told me that it was just a prank and that I shouldn't take it so seriously. Later, she apologized to me, but not like she means it. More like when your mother makes you apologize for something dumb that you did, and you're just saying sorry by default to get it out of the way. It definitely came off that way, and I'm very, very upset about it. This is a deal breaker, isn't it? I mean, I've completely lost trust in my girlfriend. Who knows if she's ever gonna slap me in my face again while I'm sleeping? Or worse, what should I do? She straight up slapped you in the face, thinking that you were still asleep. I mean, how insane is that? What in the world was she thinking? Did she seriously think you were just not gonna notice what was going on and think to yourself, "Man, my cheek hurts for no reason, let's go back to sleep"? I think the original poster already gets it, but yeah, this is a pretty big deal. She was more than willing to slap you in the face while she thought you were sleeping, all over an argument that clearly she lost or something. I mean, you both apologized, you made up, what's the big deal here? There's no reason to slap someone in their sleep over that. That is not how you solve arguments. And if anything, it just made the whole situation a lot worse for her. So I would definitely take a good hard look at this relationship. She is literally willing to attack you at your most vulnerable state. And no, that was definitely not a prank. So best of luck getting that figured out, and best of luck in getting a good night's sleep. Because who knows, she might roll up and slap you again. You never know. My husband has been dishonest about his finances, claiming that he doesn't have the money to pay for household expenses, despite the fact that I checked his credit card statement. And now I don't know what to do or how to tackle this situation. I'm a 32-year-old female and my husband is 32 years old. We've been married for 3 years and I make the majority of our household income and pay the lion's share of our bills. He has a set amount we agreed to pay bi-weekly in line with his payday to contribute. We keep our finances completely separate except for this. Before moving here, he had never had a credit card and his parents were in serious debt. I told him to be very careful with his card, but that it was a good idea to have one to build up credit for himself, of which he previously had none. Over the years, he has abused that card horribly, even going as far as to increase his credit line against my advice. I also had parents who were massively in credit card debt, so I've known exactly how that feels. So I've never allowed myself to be in any kind of debt, and I'd like to think I manage my finances very well. Several months back, of his own volition, my husband came to me distraught and seeking advice because he had overdrawn his $7,500 credit card. He told me to take his card from him and that he was going to remove it from online accounts to prevent usage until he could pay it back down again. So, being the good wife that I am, I took the card and I hid it. Fast forward to today, and every once in a while, I check in with with him just to ask and see how he's doing with paying that card down. He tells me he's doing well, and I've really been happy with the progress that he's making. But today, I found a credit card statement left open on his desk, and my curiosity took hold of me. He is almost maxed out on this card, and as of last month, he paid out more than he paid in. His list of charges include a gift card for his PlayStation, as well as several charges to restaurant takeout and food delivery apps. He has clearly not removed his card from any of these, and has even made attempts to hide his food purchases from me when I've gotten home from work. He spent over $200 on fast food last month alone, and this is the only month that I looked at. On the other hand, with our finances separated, I feel like I have no business interfering in them like this, but it is affecting our lives too. He is unable to pay for basic necessities like paper towels, or even shampoo or groceries sometimes, and I have to foot most of it instead. We need thousands of dollars in repairs to the house, and he has already told me he won't be in any position to contribute, so that will also entirely fall on me. This just doesn't seem fair, and I only found this out by snooping around. Am I in the wrong to be upset about this? How do I approach this when we've already talked about his spending issues multiple times? What should I do? Honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would be thanking my lucky stars that my finances were separate from my significant other. I mean, this kind of behavior is just not okay. This man is 32 years old. It's time to take a class at a community college or have some kind of intervention to explain, hey, our future is in jeopardy if you keep doing this. Because it really does start with small things like this, and then eventually he's got multiple cards open and he can't pay off any of them. In case you're not aware, having credit card debt looming over you is literally a nightmare. I've dealt with that in the past and it absolutely sucks, because even when you're close to paying it off, there's always just a little bit more that you've got to pay. It really is unfair sometimes. But with healthy habits and proper restrictions in your life, you can keep things out of debt, like it is possible. But it sounds like this guy would rather spend money on gift cards for his PlayStation and spending over $200 on fast food every month. I mean, what is that all about? The fact that he can't take care of groceries or other necessities, things that you actually need in your daily life, is a big red flag and something that definitely needs to be discussed. I think if anything, he needs to be much more transparent about what he's spending his money on. A possible solution is looking at the statements every month with him and detailing what we should have bought and what we should not have bought. Maybe that will help him understand, hey, these small purchases really do add up, and if we eliminate these things, we might be able to save up for, I don't know, retirement? Because these habits definitely need to be broken, and he clearly needs to have some kind of restrictions on his cards. Otherwise, the debt is only going to go up and things are only going to get worse. An entitled Karen tries to steal my PS5 after I just bought it, and when I push her away to try and protect my property, she turns incredibly racist and tries to claim that I assaulted her. Eventually, the cops had to show up and take care of the situation. Here's what happened. So I'm currently still laughing about this situation as it just happened today. I went to Walmart to get some meat and diapers, and then went to check the gaming section to see if they had a discount on some games I wanted. I noticed then that they had the first PS5 that I've ever seen in the wild since the launch of that system, and I thought, oh, that's great. I already have one, but I could make some money selling this one. I called the Walmart associate over, and they opened the cage and they got the unit. And unlike other stores, in Walmart you have to pay right there at the electronics section. You can't just go to the cashier near the door and pay. So I coughed up a little bit over $500, got my receipt, and was headed towards the door. And that is when I ran into the entitled Karen and her spoiled, rotten child. Right after I paid, I turned my cart to see this boy yelling, "Oh my god, Mom, it's a PS5!" as well as pointing at me and my cart. The entitled Karen then comes over to me and asks me where I found it. I told her I got it out of the cage in the electronics section, but explained that I'm pretty sure it's the last one that they had. And this is the beginning of the most hilarious conversation and chain of events that I've experienced in a very long time. The entitled Karen says, "So you said that this is the last unit?" I responded back by saying, "I believe so, ma'am. You can go ask the Walmart guy over there, he can verify." The Walmart employee overheard our conversation and said back to us, "No, unfortunately that was the last one. We only got 2 units today and sold them both." At this point, the spoiled rotten child chimed in, looked at his mom and said, "But Mom, it's been 2 years of you telling me you want to get me a PS5. After hearing this comment from her child, the Karen looks at me and says, "So don't you want to just give me yours? You're like 30 and my son will use it way more than you will." I was kind of surprised by this and I said to her, "No, I'm sorry, but I've already paid for it. Good luck in your search though." The Karen then tries to gaslight me by saying, "You did not pay for it. You're not even near the cashiers. Your people don't even play video games." I was definitely taken back by that that because I could not believe what I was hearing. I said, "Excuse me? My people what? What do you mean by my people?" This Karen then says, "Mexicans. I know you guys. Your accent is horrible, by the way." At this point, I thought I should pull my phone out because I knew where this was going. I've seen it on the internet many times, but I never expected that this would happen to me in a small town in New Hampshire. I responded back to this lady and I said, "First of all, I'm not Mexican. Secondly, we're done. I paid for the unit and it's mine. You can go throw a tantrum, but nothing will change. Best of luck." After I said this, her spoiled rotten child had a meltdown. He slaps himself on the ground and begins kicking and screaming and having a tantrum. This Karen looks at me and says, "You are a piece of trash. My son needs this and I'm taking it. You're not even from this country." She then calls me a racial slur that was unbelievably offensive. Thankfully, the Walmart employee overheard and saw all of this, as he's the one that was helping me get the console from the cage. And best of all, this guy thought she was talking to him. So he comes over and starts yelling at her, reprimanding her for using that kind of racial slur that he thought was directed towards him. At this point, this entitled Karen then puts her hands on my PS5, and I instantly push her away. She then started to scream and yell, saying that I assaulted her and that people should call the cops. She kept saying this racial slur over and over again, claiming that I did steroids and all this other garbage. So I just moved away and waited for the cops to arrive. In a fantastic twist of irony, the cop that showed up and took care of our situation was Hispanic. I tell him exactly what happened and showed the receipt of the console that I purchased with my own credit card. The Walmart employee also was a total king, and he was on my side the entire time. This entitled Karen got angry and started saying this racial slur over and over again in front of the cops, and eventually this led to her being put in handcuffs. The cop then asked if I wanted to press charges against this lady, and I was like, yes, of course I do. I went back and tipped the Walmart employee about $50 because he literally had my back during this entire confrontation. And also, I really did push this lady away from me, and without a witness, as a taller 6'2" man, this really would have been a much different situation for me. I don't know which one I'm more impressed with. The fact that this Karen thought she could throw around these racial slurs and think that she could get away with it, while also trying to steal from this guy, or the fact that this guy found a PS5 in the wild. I mean, those things are so hard to come by. This guy should thank his lucky stars that he had that Walmart employee to not only witness this going on, but also to have his back, because this lady was completely unhinged. The second she didn't get what she wanted, she turned into the racist person that she truly is. I can't imagine being a fly on the wall and watching this go down, as well as watching this lady try to claim that she was assaulted by this guy, like he was just protecting his property that he bought. She had no business putting her hands inside of his cart. Overall, this is really just some crazy stuff. But what would you do if you were in this situation? Leave a comment down below, we would love to see it. I was accused of credit card fraud, all because a woman didn't know her PIN number. So at the hotel that I work at, a woman came in with her dog to get a room. The check-in process got off to a rocky start when she learned that I would still require her to pay a pet fee for her emotional support dog. Even after I explained that they have no legal standing and are not covered by the law, she insisted that other hotels waive the fee. I'm sure they do. Unfortunately for her, I know the law and we don't waive it. Once that was handled, I went to run her card. The way we have it set up, the card reader is on my part of the desk and I run it myself. If we need a PIN number or anything like that, we set it up on the counter so the guest can enter it. She stared at the card reader for a moment and asked me to run it as a credit because she couldn't remember her PIN. So I went ahead and did that, but it was still asking for a PIN number, which I explained. She got flustered at this point and informed me that she had been staying in hotels for the past 10 nights and hadn't had this issue before. She then asked if I could just type the number in, and I told her no, if I couldn't run the card using the chip, I couldn't accept the card as a matter of our anti-fraud policy. For some reason, she decided that this was suspicious and unusual and took one of our business cards and wrote down the time and which of her cards it was on the back of it before heading out the door. A few minutes later, she came back in looking absolutely frazzled, and again, she tells me how suspicious this is and that she is going to report me. I didn't ask who it is that she's going to report me to, but I did give her my first name and my title. She also informed me that she's going to cancel her card, which I guess means she's just choosing to make her own life a lot more difficult. Finally, she looked around the desk for a moment, examined the wall behind me as best as she could from a few feet away, and stared at the security monitors for a moment before finally leaving. After that ordeal, it seems like that dog is going to have a lot of emotions to support tonight. The fact that this lady acted like that and tried to pretend like she did not know her PIN number is super suspicious. That to me screams fraudulent. Like 100% it seemed like she was using a stolen card. Or she's planning on doing some kind of chargeback. I just don't understand why people have to act like complete morons when their card is getting declined. Like, guess what? It's your card. It's not mine. I didn't run this card and suddenly say, oh, I'm gonna make sure it's not accepted. Like, your money's on that. Shouldn't you know what's going on with your card? How do you not know your PIN number? Like, that's crazy to me. If anything, she should get upset over the fact that she doesn't know her PIN number. Even though personally, I don't think that was actually her card. I think she was just trying to pull something sneaky on this hotel, and when she didn't get her way, she tried to throw these weird threats around. At the end of the day, I bet this all was just a big bluff. She wasn't gonna do anything. If anything, it was just fear tactics to try and manipulate this poor hotel receptionist and try and scare her into letting her get a room or something like that. So honestly, good riddance. And hopefully this lady never has to deal with that ever again. I cheated to get back on my boyfriend for cheating on me in the first place. And now my boyfriend is acting like it's 20 times worse than everything he has done, and he won't move on from it at all. And now I don't know what to do. A cheater is a cheater, and there is never a good reason, even if you try your best to justify it. I'm a 25-year-old female, and I found out about multiple infidelities from my partner of 1.5 years throughout our relationship. He owned up and apologized for the ones I was aware about. However, I will never know how many more instances there actually were that I may have missed. We have since tried moving on and have been working on rebuilding our trust. I was unfaithful in return, and once it was revealed, it was like the whole world turned upside down. Nothing but this one instance is redirecting and interfering with the whole course of our relationship. I understand the hurt feelings, the betrayal, and the shame he feels, because I went through it so many times with him. Like I said, there's no justification to cheating, and I think subconsciously somehow I do want this to be justified in some way. I just feel like his infidelity first, his actions afterwards, and how we moved on prior when it happened paved the way for this exact thing to occur. I truly do not believe I was unfaithful out of malice. It honestly meant absolutely nothing to me, and I could have easily forgotten about it forever. But because of this, I feel like I'm being penalized so much. He said that even though he still wants to be with me, he doesn't know how or if that is what he really wants. He said he lost all respect for me and cannot look me in the eyes anymore. Again, it is completely understandable that he is allowed to grieve in whatever way he wants, but I feel like I didn't give that same energy each time it happened to me. I guess I just kind of expected him to ride for me like I did for him, even though I see now that was probably a big mistake. I feel bad that I am so focused on how his reaction to my infidelity is so unfair to me, instead of just focusing on the fact that I messed up and caused an even bigger rift to appear between us. I'm honestly just very lost in the situation, and I simply don't know what to do. I really think it's obvious, but maybe you just need someone to say it. This relationship is completely over. Like, you cheated on your boyfriend to get back at him cheating on you multiple times, when in reality, you should have just dumped this guy to the curb and said, okay, get lost. But instead, you decided, oh, I want him to feel bad about what he did to me. I want him to feel the same grief that I felt. So I'm gonna cheat after winning him back over and trying to make our relationship work. So you quite literally went the revenge route instead of having some semblance of self-respect and deciding, you know what, I'm gonna go find someone who's not gonna cheat on me. This is a very bad relationship, and you would be better off being with somebody else. This man does not care about you, and he is more upset that you tricked him and cheated on him behind his back than he is about him cheating on you multiple times. I think both of you have a lot of issues to work on, and I don't think that's something you need to work on with this guy, because cheating to get back at a cheater is not the answer. It makes you both look stupid, and honestly, you could do a lot better than this. My marriage has changed almost overnight, and I don't know what to make of this situation. I'm a 33-year-old male, and I've been married to my wife for 4 years now. Up until last week, this marriage has been the healthiest relationship that I've ever been in. We had complete trust, wonderful chemistry, went on weekly dates, communicated very well, and we are without a doubt best friends. Last year, I took a job in another city, which has me away from home for half of the week. I knew that this would be a strain on our relationship, and we had talked about me staying for a year and then finding something more local. And now, we are a few months away from that mark. She agreed, and we both decided to put off trying for a kid until after that period of time. She recently got a promotion at her job, which has her in a high-stress training environment for the next couple of months. I offered to put my 2-week notice in at my job so that I could be home more to support her, but she declined, saying that it was only temporary and that we would be fine. Last Last week, she had one of her male coworkers spend the night while I was away. She turned off our pet cameras, deleted the footage of him coming and going from our doorbell camera, and lied to me when I asked if everything was okay. The only way I found out was a neighbor asking about the strange car in my driveway. I confronted her about it and she admitted to having him over, but said nothing had happened and that they were just venting about work stress and relationship stuff. I want to trust her so badly, but lying about everything put doubt in my head. To be clear, normally if she would have told me that she was having a coworker over to talk or to study, I would have 100% been fine with it. It's the deception that hurts the most here. We talked all weekend and her solution was space. I agreed to this solution, and so I went into the city where I work a day early. She assures me that this is a combination of work stress and the fact that all the relationships around her have husbands that work locally, so I'm not very present physically by comparison. I have a feeling that us waiting on having kids is a huge factor there too, as all of her friends around her age are having kids now as well. Our relationship has now taken a 180 ever since the initial confrontation. What was a wonderful marriage to my best friend now feels like I'm dating someone who is barely interested. I'm currently looking for a job locally that will have me home more, but I'm afraid that this is too little too late. I just feel hopeless right now. Was leaving a mistake? I wanted to take the week off so that we could really hash things out, but she wanted space. Or is this the case where I'm making a mountain out of a molehill? What should I do? I've got to be honest here, it really seems super suspicious that your wife not only had a male coworker over at your house, but also allowed him to spend the night sleeping over there, and on top of that, she deleted all footage of him ever even showing up, not to mention the fact that she lied about the entire situation. That in and of itself is super suspicious, and you have every right to confront her about that. I really can't think of a good reason why she would delete the footage. If anything, I would have personally wanted to keep the footage around. I would have wanted to prove to my significant other that, hey, here was my coworker, they came over and they spent the night. Here is literal proof that nothing happened while they were here. Like, if she really cared about her husband, wouldn't she keep that around? To me, this is a massive red flag, and this is something you definitely should not take lightly. And whoever that neighbor is that told you about this strange car in the driveway, I would honestly keep them very close because they have a good idea of what's actually happening. If anything, you could even go to them and be like, hey, what do you know about that car? Because I actually don't know anything about it either. And they might be able to give you some kind of lead as to who it was that was over at your house. There could even be a chance that they have some kind of security footage detailing exactly who was coming in and out of your house. Who knows? You never know unless you ask. I just think it's very suspicious and very hard to believe that nothing happened between her as well as her coworker. She was clearly trying to cover her tracks about something that she said didn't happen, even though it could not be more obvious that something did happen. Because from the looks of it, she tried to remove any proof that he was ever there. And unless your neighbor said something, she probably never would have told you that he was over. So I think you should take a good hard look at the situation you're in, because from the outside looking in, this looks incredibly sketchy. My partner's apartment is absolutely disgusting, and today I got so nauseous that I had to leave. Now I'm not sure what to do. My partner and I have been together for 3 years. When you walk in through the door, you are greeted with a trash bag without a can in front of you, along with a pile of recycling. To your right is the kitchen. The sink is filled with dishes, and there is a rotting smell in the air. Black stuff has built up all over the sink. There's random pieces of food all over the counter. Sometimes there is cooked food still in the pan that has been left there for a week or more. The bathtub has grime on it, and the bathroom sink sometimes has black stuff on it. And because of that, I simply can't be in there anymore. My job is very stressful as a teacher, and I can't handle the stress it causes me to go there sometimes. I am also very sensitive to smells, so I can get very nauseous very easily. I went there today after not seeing my partner for a while because of a really bad name that he called me during an argument. I felt awful because after 10 minutes of being there, I just had to go home. I was so stressed out from work and I felt nauseous. It was not good. Overall, it made me really sad. I wish I could just go happily to my partner's house and hang out. I told him how I was feeling, and he said I didn't have to come over if it made me feel sick. I told him I would like to be able to come over because otherwise we won't see each other much. I would invite him over to my place, but I currently have roommates who are not fond of guests. He said it upsets him, but he can't keep the apartment how I like. I asked for clarification, as well as an explanation as to why he couldn't just clean up the black stuff and the old food on the counter, since that is what really bothered me. And after I said that, he got upset and said he didn't want to have a conversation conversation about it. This is all tearing me apart because I want to spend time with him, but he's not making any kind of effort to clean things up. And now I simply don't know what to do. This is a really nasty situation because there's a really simple solution. Why doesn't this guy just hire someone to do a deep cleaning of his apartment? Like, there's literally services available to take care of this like today. It seems like the guy in this situation's being very selfish. Like, this could very easily be taken care of and your girlfriend could actually feel welcome at your apartment, but instead you want to keep it dirty and gross while acting like you can't clean up the place. And I don't personally think that the original poster's overreacting. If I went into someone's apartment and it smelled like everything was rotting and there was black stuff in the bathtub and in the sink and there was food and dirt and grime all over the kitchen, I wouldn't want to be in there either. Why would I? That honestly sounds really disgusting. So I don't blame her for saying, whoa, you gotta clean this up. This is bad. Maybe the boyfriend just doesn't realize how bad it is and he's acting prideful and probably embarrassed to do anything about it. So if anything, maybe talk to him about hiring somebody to clean up the apartment. Like, I don't think this is the first time this has ever happened, where someone gets behind on cleaning up their apartment and things have slowly started to get disgusting around their living space. So I would say try and have that conversation with him. And hopefully he's willing to make that step, because this is a really easy thing to fix and it would be really silly to let this be the thing that drives your relationship apart. Today I messed up when I tried to convince my parents to do an intervention for my brother who had some really bad addictions. And boy, did it not go well. What I'm about to share happened more than a month ago, and at the time there was nothing funny about it. Now it completely cracks me up and makes me cringe whenever I think about it. So at the time I was 18 years old and I still lived with my parents, and Christianity played a big role in my family. It still does. I'm not sure if I believe what they believe, but one thing was certain: my brother, who's 25, believed that there was only one true God, and that was the variety of substances that he was addicted to. At some point in his life, getting under the influence, if you know what I mean, was no longer about having fun, it was about feeding an addiction. When he started stealing from my family to support this habit, that's when my dad called the cops and had him arrested. My dad's plan was not to send my brother to prison, he was just buying time to come up with another solution. He called a family meeting and we brainstormed. Besides praying and hoping that a higher power magically makes my brother stop using these substances, rehab was the next best thing. My dad wanted to literally drag my brother to the nearest rehab center and force him to check in. I suggested that we try an intervention, just like the ones on TV, where loved ones talk to their family member who was struggling with addiction. In those television shows, they would have letters that they wrote to show how much they care and hopefully inspire the addict to seek professional help. My family agreed to do the intervention based on my passionate pitch. We wrote our letters and waited until my brother got released from jail the following day. When my brother entered the house, the living room was occupied by family members, church members, and a few of my brother's friends and one of his ex-girlfriends. I never expected my parents to basically invite the whole town, but there they all were. My mom explained to my brother what was happening before volunteering to be the first person to read a letter. But my brother was not about that life. He told my mom to stop reading and allow him to go upstairs or he was gonna get upset and say some things that he can't take back. But my mom kept reading, which then prompted my brother to roast the ever-living crap out of all of us. He made fun of my mom for being addicted to Botox and always running on the treadmill with her arms straight down. He then asked my dad what God thinks about him paying for scandalous pictures online, if you know what I mean. He said some terrible things about me and then moved on to my uncle, advising him to lose 200 pounds before trying to save another person's life. Then he went to his ex-girlfriend, and this was probably the funniest one of them all. He said to his ex-girlfriend that her belly button looked like a butthole, which was the real reason he broke up with her. This went on and on until an argument broke out between my brother and everyone else. If my brother was not the tallest person in the room, my guess is someone would have punched him in the face long ago. Luckily, it didn't go that far. My brother eventually went upstairs and didn't come down until there was no one left but my parents and I. It was awkward between all of us. My dad and I were unable to look at each other for the rest of that week. And what made it even worse was the fact that neither of us denied what my brother said about all of us. It was never mentioned again. Since then, my brother agreed to go to rehab. He's been clean for 22 days, and it seems like he's doing so much better. My mom stopped using the treadmill and is now running in the park early in the mornings when none of us are awake, just so she can see if she's actually moving her arms or not. Thankfully, everything seemed to calm down and the drama went away, and hopefully my brother continues to stay clean. This story is literally hilarious because that older brother had an insult for just about everybody. He probably had something stored up on everybody in that room ever since he went to jail, and that is absolutely hilarious to me. It is great to see that he's clean for 22 days and hopefully he keeps that streak alive, because even though his family was just just a little too clumsy about the intervention. I think there's people in his life that love and care about him, and they want to see him have success in this. My entitled mom stole $8,000 from me and committed credit card fraud by opening credit cards in my name. Growing up, my mom was always in and out of jail for stealing. The last time she was arrested was in 2015, and I was 19 years old at the time. She always said she stole to provide for our family, but we never lived in a stable home. She would just blow money on expensive gifts and tell us because we have these expensive items, we're not poor. She basically tried to justify it by saying, "How many poor kids do you know who have stuff like this?" Mind you, this is all while we live hotel to hotel. Growing up, I became the financially responsible child. I worked multiple jobs, I got good grades, and I did community service. As a result, I was able to save up $8,500 for college with multiple scholarships. During my hard work in high school, I also helped my mom with bills and paying for whatever she needed help with. When I left for college, she was arrested again, and I had to be dropped off states away by my aunt for my first day of college. I asked my mom for my college money, and she said she would transfer the money when she got out. When she got out, it all magically disappeared. She tried to blame my dead grandmother for stealing the money, but in 2019, I discovered multiple credit cards and some apartment that was late on bills all opened under my name. I cried to my mom about all these issues, and she confronted me and asked me for more money. So at the time, I gave her more money. I graduated with a bachelor's degree and went to grad school. I was able to get into grad school for 1 year before I needed to take out some loans. I applied, but I was denied due to all the negative items on my credit score. My mom told me to just pay it off, but I didn't do that and instead dropped out of college. I was absolutely devastated, but I wasn't going to pay for other people's fun ride. I called all the credit card companies and got the address for all the credit cards, and lo and behold, they were all my mom's addresses. When confronted, she broke down, saying it was my grandmother and how dare I blame her for this. She demanded an apology and didn't speak to me for a week. My grandmother died before all the credit cards were opened. I filed a police report against my mother, but she doesn't know that yet. But when she does find out, I'm sure she's going to be incredibly upset. What a horrible situation to be in. I can't imagine having multiple credit cards open in my name, as well as an apartment under my name with all these bills and payments to make. That must be horrible. The original poster went on to say that when it comes to the credit card, they have gotten a lot of it taken off of their name, and there's only 2 cards and 1 bill on their credit score left that they're trying to figure out, which is really good. Hopefully this can lead to them getting back into grad school and furthering their education. I honestly can't imagine having my entire life derailed, all because of a family member who decided to try and take away my future. My boyfriend completely forgot my birthday, and I don't know what to do or how to even respond. So I met him 5 to 6 months ago, and we dated for 3 months. He then had to move, and we are long distance for now. It's been about 2 months long distance, and we talk every day, and I'm going out to visit him in 10 days for about 10 days in total. While he was here, the topic of birthdays naturally came up, so we told each other our birthdays. He mentioned that he's very bad with dates, and that his sister often has to remind him of his parents' birthdays so he can pick up a birthday gift. He said he would do his best to remember mine. It's been a while since that conversation, and I was positive that he forgot it. I thought it would be awkward to just say nothing and then mention that it was my birthday on the day of. The thing is, my best friend is getting married the day after my birthday, and since it's largely the same group of people, I decided not to have any kind of dinner, party, or gathering this year. So as we were chatting, I mentioned to him saying, "So my birthday is next week, but I'm not doing much for it because of the wedding." Essentially, I was reminding him in an effort to avoid any issue of him forgetting. From his blank reaction, I am absolutely sure that he forgot it. He just said, "Oh, that's okay, you can celebrate another time." I thought to myself, okay, well, at least I reminded him. I didn't expect anything much. Just a verbal happy birthday would have been great, and maybe we would celebrate when I see him soon. Well, my birthday was today, and he of course forgot it. In fact, he only realized it because a few of my friends sent me flowers, candy, and other things, and I posted a picture on Instagram in my story. In truth, I'm very hurt. I mean, I even reminded him myself, and still he forgot. I feel if it was important, he would have remembered, especially after my blatant reminder. But now I'm not sure what to do. I feel like I'll come across as making a big deal over nothing, and the last thing I want to do is to try upsetting him. But if I say nothing, I'm faking it. Again, just a simple verbal happy birthday would have made me happy. I didn't expect anything elaborate. How can I handle this situation? Am I being childish to be upset? What should I do? I think this definitely is something you should talk to him about. Your birthday obviously means a lot to you, and you don't want to set up a pattern for future celebrations of other events where he just forgets it and then you tell him after the fact. Like maybe explain to him, hey, this was a really important day to me, and I really wanted to celebrate this in some way, even if it's just a simple verbal happy birthday. Like it's still important to me. I think having a conversation somewhere along those lines will hopefully help him realize that, hey, next time I gotta do better. And this guy has a phone with a calendar on it. Like it's not that hard to set a reminder on your phone that says, hey, I got a birthday coming up with my girlfriend. I gotta make sure I celebrate it. This literally would have solved all of his problems right then and there. So in that regard, I think there's not much of an excuse as to why he didn't celebrate your birthday. I think having this conversation with him will also really establish that these types of events are really important to you. Because obviously, for whatever reason, it doesn't hold the same weight for your boyfriend. Maybe for whatever reason, he just doesn't view birthdays as that important, which might explain why he forgets his parents' birthdays all the time. So I really think if you talk to him and work it out, you guys can find some kind of common ground and understanding with one another where the important dates are remembered and properly celebrated. My female friend doesn't want me to leave her, even though she doesn't view me romantically and she has a boyfriend. And now I'm just really confused. I know this is a tricky one, but hear me out. I was always upfront about how I feel for her. I never lied, and I was open about my romantic feelings towards her. She told me that after an accident, she felt like I didn't fit the criteria for the person that she wanted to be with. I said that is fine, and after some heartbreaking deliberation, decided that I couldn't be friends with her. A little more background, she didn't outright tell me that she lost attraction. She waited a few months as she was hoping I'd just get it after constantly turning me down. And I will admit it, I was being very clueless and obviously deliberately ignorant. She now has a boyfriend, and he's a cool dude, I assume, but he lives a plane flight away. We talked about everything together, and I even helped her with her emotional troubles. We even had a few vulnerable moments. When she told me how she really felt, I was devastated. I thought I could try being friends for a bit, but I realized after seeing her face light up talking about this other guy that it was just too much. I didn't just cold shoulder her either. I helped her work on finding a support system that she can trust with her honest feelings and was preparing to move on with my life. It just doesn't feel like I should stick around to be this negative, jealous energy when she's doing well. She is a super bright and very charming individual, so I know that she will be okay. She says she loves me as a person and sees value in me, but I still really like her. I told her it was basically asking me to torture myself just so we could stay friends. But she thinks that love is wanting what's good for the other person, even if it means you don't get what you want. And while I agree to an extent, that just made me feel very confused. I'm just not sure what to do here. Like I said, I really do like her, but with all things considered, I honestly don't know if I could be friends with her. What should I do? I think in my opinion, it's honestly time to put yourself first. She does not have the same feelings towards you. She does not like you in that way, but it sounds like she wants to try and keep you around for some reason, even though this is very painful for you. Like you obviously like her more than just friends, so trying to stay friends is probably going to be really hard. So I completely understand when you say, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. And you said it yourself, she is head over heels in love with this guy. But I think it's really irresponsible of her to expect you to have to stick around and be friends with her. In my eyes, it comes off as very manipulative and not very fair for you. And I think she's right in some regards. Love means that you don't always get what you want. And if anything, that just means that you are not going to be in her life. She's not going to get what she wants in that regard. I feel like this is a very one-sided situation where she wants what she wants, but she doesn't really care what your interests are. Like that little cliche that she threw your way, it literally goes both ways. I'm sure you had some fantastic times with this girl, and I know you obviously still care about her, but for your own sanity, it's time to move on. You'll be happier being away from that situation, and you won't be so tortured knowing that she has a boyfriend and that boyfriend is not you. She is not the only fish in the sea, and you will find someone who loves you just the way you are. My boyfriend has a work wife and is continuing an inappropriate relationship with her after I've told him multiple times how I feel, and I honestly don't know what to do. I've been with my boyfriend for a few years. We generally don't have any issues, typically just a few stupid arguments that get resolved rather quickly. He started a new job and has a group of co-workers that he usually talks to. The majority of them are women, with the exception of one other guy and himself. I never worried about him cheating, but as a girl, while, I just didn't like seeing him have all of these group chats and separate direct messages with some of these girls. But I'm not the type of person to tell him that he's not allowed to talk to certain type of people. Last year, I was showing him some videos, and there was one about people that have work girlfriends and boyfriends. I forget why I showed him that video, but it wasn't because I thought he had one. I think it was geared towards why people shouldn't have one. Anyways, I continued showing him videos, and then he stopped me to tell me that he has a work girlfriend, and it's one of the girls in his work friend group. I was heartbroken. I know some people consider it cheating, but I don't. Just incredibly disrespectful to me. I told him how I felt about it and assumed that was the end of it. Every time I would see this girl message him, I would get annoyed, but I just kept that to myself. A few months later, he was sleeping, and I just had a feeling that I needed to check his phone. In the past, he would tell me I could read the messages he has with some of these people, but I didn't think I needed to. Anyways, I found messages in their coworker group chat of them still calling each other work husband and wife, which feels worse than work boyfriend and girlfriend. In their private direct messages, they would send each other suggestive memes, talk about some really inappropriate stuff, as well as things that they find attractive about other people. In addition, he lied to me about driving her home from a gathering that this coworker group had. I was bawling my eyes out. When he woke up, I told him what I found, and he was just quiet. I was saying how hurt and upset I was, asking if he had feelings for this girl and if he wanted to be with me. I told him to leave since he wasn't saying anything. He then told me that she has a boyfriend, and he said he thought I was upset since I used to be his work girlfriend when we first met and thought I didn't like sharing the title. He also said that he was silent since he had just woken up, even though he was just staring at the ceiling for several minutes while I was a mess. He said he didn't tell me about driving her home from the party since he knew I wouldn't like it. Again, I thought we resolved the issue. He told me next time to just ask to look at his phone. He then sent her a message saying that the suggestive memes and all the messages needed to stop since it was unfair to his girlfriend. This girl then gave such a snarky reply, trying to downplay them as just pals with the same sense of humor. A few months later, I went on his phone again. I saw that they were still sending suggestive memes to one another. This time, he got angry. He was defending her, saying it wasn't necessarily suggestive memes, and ended up trying to turn it on me with my guy friends to just try and make points. He ended up changing his phone password and added a lock on his WhatsApp. We were then invited to a wedding for one of the coworkers, and this girl was going to be there. I told my boyfriend, who is a very touchy person, that I don't feel comfortable with him touching her, regardless if it's a hug, a handshake, or anything else, and we will do whatever we can to not sit next to her. He ended up touching her twice. Each time I reminded him to stop. We then had a big fight on the phone 2 weeks later because we never talked about the wedding. It was more of me bawling my eyes out and begging him to answer any questions or comments I had, but he was silent. He ended up saying that he was hurt since I didn't see that he was trying to work on his touchiness, since 2 touches was apparently him trying. Ever since, he never leaves his phone around me. I told him that I want him to tell me if anything happens between them, whether it's her sending him certain messages or certain exchanges at work. I've never told him that he can't talk to her. I just asked that he not touch her, be alone with her, or sit next to her. He went out with this group 2 times this month. The first time, he didn't even tell me that he was going. I asked him why, and he said, "Well, I didn't tell you that I got a haircut," as if a haircut and him lying and hurting my feelings are the same thing. It has been a year of dealing with this garbage, and I know that it's still continuing. My boyfriend is very stubborn. I'm going to confront him again and ask to read their messages. I'm not sure how to approach the situation when I find more inappropriate messages, and I just know that there will be more. I know he will never do anything physical with her, but it's really starting to feel like emotional cheating. What should I do? This definitely is a really rough situation because it looks like your boyfriend is not willing to change. Instead, it seems like he's more upset that you keep catching him in the act of basically flirting with his coworker. To me, it really begs the question of who he values more. Does he value his relationship with his girlfriend or this girl from work that he's clearly messaging and flirting with? And that might just be the question you need to see if you really even want to stay with this guy. He doesn't completely seem like a winner, and if he's not even going to be honest with you when it comes to his dealings with his coworkers, then I'm hard-pressed to think that this relationship is ever going to last. I feel like my boyfriend is taking advantage of my finances, and I'm not sure what to do. So I'm a 21-year-old female, and I've been with my 29-year-old boyfriend for almost 4 years. We met when I was 18 years old. I am in school and I am an athlete, and my boyfriend is a full-time athlete as well. In fact, we both met at the gym that we both train at. He has never had a car and has often lived lived with his friends since I've known him. He had his own place for about a year. After that, he moved in with me temporarily between places. But he ended up living with me for about a year and never paid a single bill. I didn't ask him to, but he jacked up my electricity and sometimes bought groceries, but I still bought most of everything and did almost all the cooking and cleaning. I moved out of that place and now I'm with my parents while I'm in school. He is still looking for a place to live, but is currently living with a friend. He says he's renting a room, but I know he isn't paying. He also at the moment doesn't want to move back in together. The only way we hang out is if I drive 25 minutes one way to pick him up. I've been giving him rides for years and often drive back and forth late at night just so we can spend time together, as well as rides to the gym and everything in between. He will sometimes buy me dinner or rarely some groceries, but majority of the time it's me doing this. I buy his morning coffee, he eats at my place every time he's over. When we travel for competitions, my parents usually pay for the hotels. I just feel like he takes advantage of my parents having decent money and expects me to pay for a lot. But then I feel bad about being mad because I know he doesn't make much money. He just relies on teaching in our sport to make money. We've had a rough relationship with a lot of toxicity and breakups. These have mostly come from him, but I've done a couple of messed up things too. I don't know. I feel like he just expects me to do everything and that I should be grateful he gives me time. I still cook everything and I still do his laundry when he's over and still clean up after him at my parents' house. Is it normal that I feel like he's taking too much from me? How would you feel if you were in my shoes? He literally won't even give me a massage, but asks for them all day, every day from me. But I will say he does help me with my sport, since he's very talented and can be very emotionally supportive too. One other very important detail is the fact that he has a green card wife. Therefore, I'm assuming he will need money for a divorce. I think they have like 3 more years before they can separate. She lives close and I've never met her, but I know that they were good friends. So I also can't get married to him until I'm at least 25. What should I do? It's definitely a big red flag if after all this time he's not willing to step up and pay for things. Like he doesn't even do his own laundry, he doesn't clean up after himself, he doesn't buy groceries or anything. This seems like a very one-sided relationship. So in a lot of ways, I think it really is taking advantage of your kindness and generosity. He's taking your parents' money as well as your money, I think mostly because you're offering it. So from my perspective, it really seems like there's a big imbalance in this relationship. And I think it's for your benefit to tell him, hey, I need you to step up. I can't be expected to pay for everything and to do everything around the house. It's not fair and I feel like you're taking advantage of me. Or something along those lines, because that's what's happening. I'm sure he cares about you in a lot of different ways and provides you support emotionally and physically, but when it comes to finances, that's a big deal in my opinion. The fact that he's not willing to step up now makes me believe that he might be like that when you get married. So I would think carefully about this and maybe have a conversation with him, because this is something he needs to take seriously. Otherwise, he could very easily just keep taking your money and not contributing anything. I left my register to help a disabled customer get into their vehicle, only to then get chewed out by my self-righteous middle manager. Here's what happened. This happened back in March of 2021. I was 22 at the time, and I was working at a big brand name hardware home improvement store. It's the blue one, if you know what I mean. I worked there as a cashier, and I had been there for a few months. At this particular store, you have several standard registers, and then customer service and the lumber registers at the other end of the store, both of which run on a different, older software than the standard registers. I've always had a knack for making computers work, and I figured out the older system pretty quickly, so I ended up being in customer service and lumber quite a bit, basically just filling in where I was needed. One night, it's about 7:30 on a Saturday or a Sunday, and it was absolutely quiet and apocalyptically slow in the store. I'm working the lumber register, and it's just me and a section manager in that part of the store. The incident in question starts when my manager is off working product, and an older gentleman, I'll say mid-70s to early 80s, comes up pushing a cart with a couple of 2x4s and a couple sheets of plywood on it, pushing all of this with just one hand. As I start to ring him up, he mentions that he has no use of his other arm and asks if I can get some help to assist him in loading this into his car. I hop on the intercom, call for load assistance at lumber, and start ringing his order up. A few minutes go by and I get no response. I ask for load assistance once again and still no response. I even call 2 more times just as a safety, but still nothing. I then directly call my store manager's phone that he has on on him, but not even he answers. At this point, the transaction's done, he's paid up, and I'm getting really upset. So I say, screw it, pull your car around, I'll help you out. He is super thankful and goes to get the car. I open the garage door that's down at the end of the store and we get it done. At this point, I will note that technically, store policy states that I'm not supposed to leave my register. However, I was helping people load things into their cars for a good 25 to 30 times in the last couple of months, all while working there. So I honestly didn't think anything of it, not even mentioning that I could see my register from the loading area. The garage door was open, so I figured it would be fine. And I even let the customer know that I might need to run back in and ring up a customer if someone comes by. And he said that he wouldn't mind that either. Of course, I never had to. Like I said, it was unbelievably quiet. No one was in the store. It took me maybe 4 to 5 minutes to get him all loaded up. He shakes my hand and takes off. As I'm walking back inside, my manager is magically coming back to his desk, right next to the register, only to then lay into me for going outside and helping this elderly customer. He looks at me and says, "Where were you?" I said, "I was helping that guy load his car just over there." He says, "You can't just leave. You're supposed to call for loading assistance." I tried to explain to him that I did call multiple times and that I even tried calling him, but he wasn't having it. He just cut me off and continued to berate me for literally helping a disabled customer. I'm not a violent or confrontational person, but when I tell you it took every fiber of my being to not curse him out or to escalate the situation, this situation certainly fit the bill. And honestly, I've never met a more holier-than-thou middle manager with less to stand on. After that incident of getting reprimanded for helping a disabled customer, I quit my job like 10 days later. I didn't even put in a 2-week notice. I just straight up quit. And honestly, I'm better off without those people anyways. That manager really sucks. It's not like this person didn't try and ask for help or call somebody to be like, "Hey, come on over here and help me load this car." This guy even had a phone on him that this person tried to call them and they literally just ignored it. So honestly, good for the original poster for quitting this job, because you could do so much better than this garbage. Because honestly, having managers like that is really a miserable experience and no one should ever have to put up with that. An entitled Karen tries to steal my phone after I refuse to give it to her child. She then ends up breaking my phone and the cops have to show up. Here's what happened. So this story takes place when I had fallen sick and had to book an emergency appointment with the doctor so I could get checked out. I also needed paperwork for my work from my doctor, basically saying that I was here. I was sitting in the waiting room using my phone to distract myself from the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. I was just sitting there on my phone reading Reddit when the entitled Karen and her child came in. The entitled Karen went up to the front desk and said, "I have an appointment with the doctor for my little angel." The receptionist checked the register with the aid of the names and the entitled Karen's ID and told them flat out, "Ma'am, you're 2 hours early. Would you prefer to come back in 2 hours or do you want to wait in the waiting room for an opening?" The entitled Karen looked at the lady at the front desk and said, "I will just go sit down with my little angel. Just please go talk to the doctor and I'm sure he will see us immediately." As a side note, the waiting room was incredibly busy. A lot of people are here and my own appointment is already being delayed by about 20 minutes. The entitled Karen and her child sit down a few chairs over and I was just minding my own business reading stories on Reddit on my phone when suddenly the Karen's kid was standing right in front of me. They looked at me and said, "Do you have any games on your phone?" I responded and said, "Just a few, but I'm reading right now." The kid then immediately chimed in and said, "Can I play games on your phone?" I looked up and I said, "I would rather not. As I said, I'm reading, and this is a good distraction from the sick feeling I've got." This spoiled brat then goes to his mom and cries about not being able to play games on my phone. The entitled Karen then comes over to me and says, "Give my little angel your phone. You've clearly had it for too long already, so you can miss it for a few minutes." When she said this, I was absolutely dumbfounded. I said, "Ma'am, I'm not giving your son my phone. I like my phone and I would rather not have your son break it more than it already is." As a note, my phone has a few cracks on the screen, but it's not impossible to use. I then asked the Karen, "Why won't you just let him use your phone?" This entitled Karen just wasn't having it when she said, "You clearly have no idea what it is like to have children. He will break my phone if I let him. But if he breaks yours, it won't matter because you're obviously capable of buying a new one yourself." I have no idea why she thinks that, as I'm not even dressed fancy or wearing expensive jewelry. Also, if I could buy a new phone so easily, I would not be using this one still after 7 years and many falls and scratches and cracks. I look at her flat out and I say, "I'm not giving your son my phone." A moment of silence happens when suddenly I hear footsteps and I see a glimpse of long fake nails as my phone is snatched out of my hands. nonsense. I look up to see this entitled Karen holding my phone triumphantly while smirking down at me. Her spoiled little brat was even standing next to her smiling too. And this is where things really started to pop off. Because out of nowhere, an older gentleman that was in the lobby gets up, grabs her by the wrist, and very calmly tells her to give me my phone back. He says, I might be retired from the police force, but I still know how to restrain a thief, and I can call someone to arrest you in seconds. The entitled Karen flipped the switch and said, how dare you assault me in front of my child, you old lying fart. Get your hands off of me, or I will call the real cops on you. After this, everything went so fast. My phone ended up on the ground, and the entitled Karen was yelling at the receptionist, complaining that they were letting sickos and criminals do as they please in their lobby. The spoiled brat was also crying at this Karen's leg, while the older gentleman asked if I'm okay. It took me a little to realize that I had quite the scratch on my face from this entitled Karen's horrible nails, who must have suddenly scratched me without me realizing. The scratches weren't bad, but they did hurt a little bit. The entitled Karen got so uptight against the receptionist that she ended up forcing them to call the police, which were just one street away. Pretty quickly, the police arrived, and the entitled Karen started to yell lies at them. But the officer recognized the older gentleman and knew him to be an honest man, so they asked him what happened. They also asked my side of the story, as well as the front desk receptionist, trying to figure out what actually happened. This entitled Karen was enraged and screams about how everyone is against her, as well as her little angel. As she gets taken away with her son, I pick up my phone to see extra scratch marks on my phone, making it completely unreadable. I got asked by the police officer if I wanted to press charges, but I didn't want to go through all of that. To this day, my phone is still unusable, and thankfully I didn't get seriously injured. It turns out that this entitled Karen is known for such behavior, and this wasn't her first time getting dragged off by the police. The receptionist even told me that half the time that she comes in here, the entitled Karen's kid is not even sick, but in reality, all she wants to do is just flirt with the doctor. That is absolute madness. I can't imagine someone destroying my personal property, as well as somebody scratching me in the face, all because I didn't want to give them my phone. And why would you? This person was clearly just gonna break it. How unbelievably entitled do you have to be to act like that? That's just super cringy, and it literally blows my mind that the original poster didn't press charges. If I was in their shoes, I would have immediately pressed charges on this person. They assaulted you and they destroyed your phone. I would have gladly pressed charges against this individual because I would never want anybody else to have to deal with this. But thankfully, it looks like there's good people in the world because that older gentleman stepped up to the plate and helped take care of this crazy Karen. But leave a comment down below. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you have just let it slide and say, hey, this is not worth my time? Or would you have pressed charges against this person after they scratched you and destroyed your phone? Let us know down below. My boyfriend is draining me financially, and I'm not sure if I should break up with him or if I should stay. We've been together for 7 years and living together for 6. The first few years were great. We laughed, made memories, taught each other how to grow and be confident. It literally felt like I was living a cheesy rom-com. Things changed when he quit his job a few years ago. At first, he couldn't go back because he was medically unfit to work, but then the story changed into him not wanting to be a part of the system anymore. As a result, I juggled 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. It cost me my free time, my hobbies, and my health. A few months ago, I was able to move from 2 jobs to just one that paid really well. However, I still can't keep up with the bills. I broke down one night and begged him to find work again because it was mentally and physically draining me to be the sole provider in this household. He said he would look, but his criteria for work is impossible to meet, especially with his work history and bad attitude towards authority. I've asked him to jump into anything that would allow me to catch my breath, but he tells me that I'm asking too much of him, stating that I need to stop trying to live a lavish life or whatever that means. And he says this every time I ask him to get to work. Ever since becoming the sole provider in this house, I've never had a day off. I've never bought anything myself unless I needed it for work, and I even gave up my hobbies. I started wondering, am I selfish for wanting a day off and not have to wonder if we can eat dinner that night? I want to leave. Every sign is telling me to leave and never look back. But when I start to have the conversation, I'm guilted into feeling like the crazy one, or that I have too high of expectations for life. I also worry that since he has no job, he'll end up homeless or loveless. The last thing I want to do is ruin his life. After all, we had some genuinely good moments together that I can't seem to forget. This is my first long-term relationship, and I don't have a lot of dating experience, especially when it comes to breakups. This is honestly so hard, and I don't know what to do. Your boyfriend has it completely twisted. You're not trying to live a lavish lifestyle. You're literally trying to make ends meet because he's too lazy to get back to work. This man is playing you 100%. He is gaslighting you into thinking that anything less than you working your butt off means that you are entitled and not doing enough. I mean, you asked him to get a job and he basically said, "Whoa, you're asking too much." It's completely unfair, and the power dynamic here is very shifted in his favor. You know why he's not getting a job? Because you've enabled him to not need a job. This is not your fault, don't get me wrong, but he has convinced you that it's okay for him to stay at home and to sleep in all day while you bust your butt every single day, and he just reaps the benefits of it. It's not fair, and it is absolutely at your expense. You've sacrificed so much just to be able to provide for yourself as well as him. So honestly, the problem is absolutely with him. His inability to get back to work and to do something with his life is ruining your life. So in my opinion, it's time to tell him straight up, either get a job or we're done, because you are absolutely exhausted and you can't keep living like this. And you know what? If you leaving him and going to live somewhere else causes him to go homeless and to not have any love in his life, then that is 100% his problem. He is doing nothing to try and help himself and better himself in general. And if your boyfriend is not willing to meet the bare minimum requirements of just living together and helping financially and physically, then by all means, I would go with your original idea and ditch this guy. I don't care how long you've been with him. He's clearly taking advantage of you, and you can honestly do much better than this. Today, I messed up by letting my friend who likes to prank people into my house. He then lit on fire and burned my Pokemon cards that was worth well over $8,000. Here's what happened. To start things off, let me give you some backstory. When I was in the 3rd grade, my grandfather passed away, and 2 weeks later in school, I found the most destroyed Pokemon card on the road. My grandfather always had a white beard, and the Pokemon on the card kind of reminded me of him. So from that moment on, I decided that I would collect Pokemon cards. So for 8 years now, I collected close to 15,000 Pokemon cards. I know you guys may be like, wow, that's a huge waste of money, as well as other stuff like that. But it reminded me of my grandfather, and I love collecting stuff. So for 8 years, Christmases, birthdays, Easters, every chance I got, I would ask to get Pokemon cards. It was a mini obsession. I had even collected all of the original cards. It was very expensive, but this was my life, and it was something that I loved doing. Now here comes a friend, let's call him Cole for safety reasons. That's not his real name. I've been friends with Cole ever since 7th grade, and I knew he loved my Pokemon cards. Sometime during freshman year before lockdown, he started a prank YouTube channel. He got a lot of views and a lot of subscribers. So because of that, he would always do mini pranks. I wouldn't get too upset, but he took it too far this weekend. So Saturday, he was chilling at my house because I invited him over. Well, everything seemed normal, but he asked to go to the bathroom when we were watching a movie. I keep my Pokemon cards in my room in my closet for safety. He was gone for a while, but I didn't really suspect anything. Well, flash forward to Monday. I look in my closet and all of my Pokemon cards are gone. Quite literally all of them. How he snuck all of them out is beyond me. I honestly wish I had had a camera, so I texted Cole and said, "Hey, do you know what happened to my Pokemon cards?" Cole responded by saying, maybe Charizard ate them? I told Cole, I'm not messing around. Can you please give them back? They mean a lot to me and you know that. He didn't reply after that. That is until I got a notification that he posted on YouTube. It was of him and his friend. It was a video of them taking my Pokemon cards out my back door, and along with that, they had 15,000 fake cards made, with only the backs on them and a white front. Then they burned the rest. I understand what he meant by maybe Charizard got to them. For those of you who don't know, Charizard is like a fire Pokemon, and I honestly can't believe he's done this to me. He called me and said he meant to burn the fake cards, but ended up burning the real ones on accident, which I really don't think is true because the real ones were in special cases. I am now completely broken. Those Pokemon cards were a second part to me. I sent him a huge message, and he replied that it was just a prank and to relax. He destroyed $8,000 worth of cards. I am just so broken over this. I blasted him on social media, and a bunch of his friends got mad at him, and a few got mad at me telling me to drop it. People were telling me to go to the authorities, but I'm not that type of person. He ended up deleting the video, but I'm still so very upset. All I could think about was the first card I got that reminded me of my grandfather. He messaged me today calling me a traitor for turning his friends against him in a huge paragraph about how it was a prank gone wrong and how I needed to grow up because we're about to graduate high school article saying that Pokemon cards are for little kids. Before we dive into this story and how crazy it is, the original poster actually gave us some updates. After this post blew up online, he had a few more things to say about the situation. So after going through photos and messages and receipts, the original poster states that after a lot of thought and a lot of encouragement from people online, he is going to be pressing charges and taking his friend to court. And while he collected about $8,000 worth of Pokemon cards, the value of it was easily over $20,000, especially since he had some of the older sets that were very valuable. So he has every plans of going to the police and reporting this, as well as getting a good lawyer to try and get this taken care of. He said the following: "So after going through photos and messages, as well as receipts, I'm able to compile a minimum of $3,000 in value of Pokemon cards that I've collected, and I'm taking this evidence to the cops tomorrow. I spoke to my cousin, and he said I'm gonna need solid proof of what the cards were worth, as well as their replacement value. He's a decent lawyer, but he thinks I can get $5,000 to $10,000 in court for emotional damage. That's on top of the replacement value as well. I'm very disappointed because not only has he ignored my calls and messages, but I have also lost a huge part of my life." The original poster goes on to state that they know they're not going to get all of their money back, nor all of the cards back as well, but he states that he can restart and try and build up his collection again. The original poster then goes on to discuss their interaction with Cole. They state, "As to my last post, I decided to go to the authorities. However, me being me, I decided to give him one last chance. 3 hours ago, roughly at around 7 in the morning, I decided to give him a call. I think he was sleeping because when he picked up, he was very groggy. The call went a little something like this. I said, 'Cole, I'm being completely serious. If this is a prank or if you still have my cards, I am begging you to give them back. They meant the world to me.' Cole responded by saying, 'Dude, I told you I don't have them. I'm sorry about what happened, man. I really am. I went too far.' I said, 'Saying sorry isn't enough. You knew how much those cards meant to me and you destroyed a part of my life.' Cole then said, 'I promise it was just an accident.' I hung up on him after a few more comments about how sorry he was. I didn't bother to bring up repayment, and the anger seemed to boil the tears away because I had a sense of justice in me. It took me about 2 hours to psych myself up to go to the police department. When I walked in, it was very overwhelming. There was a lot of talking and a lot of phones ringing. I walked up to the front desk and asked to report a crime. Maybe 10 minutes later, an officer comes in for an inquiry. After telling him what happened, he seemed very hurt for me. After he asked for evidence and later helped me email everything I had to the police department, as well as to him directly, he asked me if I was sure he burnt the real cards, and I told him I'm about 80% sure. After that, I don't really know much about what will happen next. However, I was told that I couldn't press charges yet, and how they had to open an investigation and gather sufficient evidence and to go over my evidence. They said that they would be contacting me. When I walked out of that police department, I felt like a brand new person, but the same person all over again. Because in that moment, I think I broke down a little bit. I was silent the whole ride home. I didn't even sing along with the radio, which I love to do. I graciously thank everyone for their support. And for those of you who are hurting with me and wanting to support me, I thank you for your kind words and your gestures. I really just hope I'm able to find some kind of justice towards my situation and losing all of those Pokemon cards." There is a lot to unpack here. I am so proud of this original poster for getting past their anxiety and going to the authorities. There is legitimately no excuse for the kind of behavior that Cole exhibited. They burned your personal property that was worth thousands of dollars. As someone who also collected trading cards when I was a kid, of all kinds, I would be so hurt if someone burned my collection. That is absolutely devastating to have something in your life taken away from you, all because of someone else wanting to make a prank video on YouTube. I really hope you're able to prove once and for all that this guy absolutely did burn your cards, and this way gets charged with something. It's not fair, and he absolutely deserves to pay for his crime. Hopefully this guy's able to find a good lawyer to help him out in this situation, because there's a lot of nuance to this that I definitely do not know the details of. But with whatever happens, I hope it works out, and I hope you're able to find justice for your destroyed Pokemon cards. My girlfriend turns off her location on her phone when she leaves her house and when I'm not in town, and I don't know what to do. Every time my girlfriend goes out to the store and I'm not in town, she turns her location off. But what she doesn't know is that I can see when she turns off her location. Every time she does it, she claims she is getting me a surprise. But every time I get back in town, there is no surprise. My oblivious self did not think to remember about the surprise, and it's never a surprise enough for her to remember to tell me. The first time she did this, I was 2,000 miles miles across the country and did not think anything of it. When I asked her where she was, she said, and I quote, "It's a surprise. Don't worry, I'll have it for you when you get back into town." I was confused at first, but I know how fast the rabbit hole of overthinking can be, so I chose not to think anything of it. But now that it's reoccurring, I'm not sure what to think at all. She is a very popular person amongst her peers and around our school. She cheerleads and is drop dead gorgeous. It would be super easy for her to pick up anybody that she meets and make them hers because of her social status. This leads me to believe things I thought I never would have to worry about. As I'm writing this, she is currently at a store that would apparently give away the surprise gift she had. So she has turned off her location because it would apparently be too obvious. I don't know if I should believe her because I love her to bits, or if I should dig deeper and lose trust with her if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just overreacting, but I want her to be honest with me. Whatever the truth may be, I just need to know. What should I do? I can definitely see where the original poster is coming from, where they say that this is kind of weird. The original poster goes on to say that this was actually his girlfriend's idea for them both to have their locations on so they can both know where each other are in case of like an emergency or anything like that. So this is why they are so confused that their girlfriend is constantly turning off their location when they go out and about and do other things. So from their perspective, it seems super sketchy. The original poster also went on to say that when they confronted their girlfriend about this, she claims to have forgotten about all the incidents regarding her location being turned off. They told her that it made them feel confused about what was going on, but that the girlfriend still seemed unfazed by this. And this really was incredibly upsetting for them. But even with that in mind and all things considered, I think it's really inappropriate to jump to some weird conclusion. We're going from your girlfriend's just turning off her location to you thinking, oh no, she has to be cheating. Just because your girlfriend is pretty and drop dead gorgeous, as you put it, doesn't mean that she's cheating. And I honestly don't think she's tricking you in any kind of way. She could very well be turning off her location so you can't see that she's going to a specific doctor's office. It could also be the fact that, yeah, maybe she is planning some big surprise and she doesn't want you to know the details yet because she's not ready. And the only way she can get away with doing that is by turning off location and then going to these certain stores. Is there some kind of like anniversary coming up or some kind of celebration or a birthday that would possibly explain this type of behavior? I just think there's a lot of other explanations here besides, oh no, my girlfriend's cheating on me. Especially if there's no history of cheating and there's no reason for you to think that either of you would be disloyal. And there's also the possibility that she does know that you're tracking her every move. So that's why she's turning it off, just to maybe have some privacy. There are a lot of options here and there could be a lot of reasons why this is happening. So in my opinion, I wouldn't jump to some crazy conclusion because it very well could cause some unnecessary friction in your relationship. And I don't think either of you would want that. An entitled Karen trespasses onto my property, demanding that I allow her entitled child to swim in my private pool. Even after telling them multiple times that they need to get off of my property, this lady simply would not take no for an answer. Here's what happened. To provide some backstory and some context, I live right next to a lake. It's great being able to live here because in the summer, I can just walk from my backyard straight onto the beach. I absolutely love swimming. However, in the late fall to the early spring, the water can be absolutely freezing. Sometimes I see people go to the lake on warm days, thinking that the lake would be a nice cool temperature before jumping out, realizing the lake was still freezing. So when the lake was still cold, I decided to get a small heated pool for the backyard. I've had this pool for about 2 years before this incident happened in early spring, when the water was absolutely freezing. I had just been swimming in my pool when I had to go inside to use the restroom. I had planned on coming back out, so I had left the pool uncovered. However, when inside, my phone started ringing. I answered the phone and it was my brother, and he needed me to get some information for him from my computer. So I got distracted for about 30 minutes before finally heading back outside. And this is when I met this entitled Karen and her spoiled child. Karen had plopped herself down on my lawn chair. Meanwhile, the previous inhabitants of the chair, my hat and sunscreen, were now conveniently laying on the ground. The spoiled child was also already swimming in my pool. My mind was not completely caught up with why in the world they were in my pool. So I just said, excuse me, why are you on my property? The entitled Karen looked up and said, "Oh, is this your property?" Flabbergasted at such a stupid remark, I said, "Yes, this is my property. Why are you here?" The Karen then looked at me and used a tone as if she was explaining something to a child. She said, "You see, my son here wanted to go for a swim, but the lake was a little too cold. Isn't that right?" I normally have a pretty long fuse, but after hearing her talk to me like a child, it was as if that fuse just got cut a little bit shorter in my mind. So I said to her coldly, "The lake ice cold, but that doesn't explain why you're on my property using my pool. The Karen didn't like me saying that because she said, "You do not have to be so rude. I'm just trying to keep my kid happy." Throughout this, the kid has been swimming around in my pool, clearly just not even paying attention to the conversation. I say, "Well, I'm sorry, but I don't let strangers use my things." I then turned to the kid and said, "So buddy, you need to get out of the pool." Maybe this was the wrong move to address the child, because right after that, the Karen got up in my face and started screaming at me. She said, "How dare you talk to my child like that? He has feelings too. He deserves to be in that pool. Plus, making him get out of the pool, he could just get hypothermia. Do you want that? Do you want my kid to have hypothermia?" At this point, I had no idea what exactly I said to make this Karen explode at me, so I just turned back to her and calmly but sternly told her, "Look, I don't care how cold the lake is. It's a warm day after swimming in this pool, and in no way could he still get cold. And secondly, he has no right to be in this pool. This is my property, and you and your son both need to leave before I call the cops." To be honest, I've never heard of an argument escalating this fast, and now here I am in a situation I can hardly even believe. The Karen did not miss a beat. She just yelled, "Good! Go ahead and call the cops. I'll just tell them that you threatened my child and you harassed me." I looked this entitled Karen right in the eye and opened my mouth, but before I could say anything, she put her hand up as if to silence me before going over to her child and saying in a sweet tone, "It's okay. This mean man just wasn't raised as a caring person or someone who shared. I'll raise you better." I was utterly stunned. Not only did she silence me, but went and told her child that I was a jerk. So I responded, "Well, if I was raised wrong, then you clearly weren't raised at all. You're acting like an infant. Now get your baby emotions and your spoiled child off my property." I had never before come up with such a good insult on the spot before, but man, did that feel good. This time, it was her turn to be stunned. She did not say a word. She just pulled her child out of the pool, grabbed her stuff off of my chair, kicked it over, and walked off my lawn with her kid in tow, before yelling curse words back at me and flipping me off. Throughout this, I just stood there with a small smile on my face. But in truth, I was absolutely fuming. It had started so fast and ended even quicker. I have never seen her or her entitled child ever again. However, I have been worried about something like that happening again, so I installed cameras around the house just in case. It's crazy to think that someone would be so entitled that they would try and act like they have some weird privilege over your personal property. Like, can you imagine what would have happened if that kid got hurt on your property while they're just swimming around in your pool? That lady would have sued you for sure. There's no way I would let that person stay on my property and swim in my pool if I was in your shoes. And honestly, you did the right thing by threatening to call the police. This lady trespassed on your property and tried to push her will on you. Like, what a terrible parent. And the fact that you put cameras around your house just because of this incident is a fantastic idea. That was literally going to be my biggest suggestion while reading this. Hopefully this lady never comes back, and hopefully this kind of thing never happens again, because it's your pool and it's your property, and you should not have to bend to some weird lady's demands just because she's entitled. Everyone that I talk to about my engagement says terrible negative things, and I don't know what to do. I am engaged to my fiance, and since getting engaged, I have encountered many people who have either told me that I am too young to get married, or that we haven't gotten to know each other long enough, or that we should not bother getting married. One colleague even went so far as to tell me to let them know when I get divorced. A good example of these negative comments happened today. I went to the nail salon and my nail lady asked me about my ring, and once I explained it to her, she said that she was excited to paint my nails for my wedding. An older woman who was eavesdropping decided to butt in and laugh. She then told me that I'm way too young to get married. I tried to laugh it off by saying, "Oh, thanks for letting me know my eye cream works." But she ruined our conversation and put a dampener on my excitement. I now don't go around broadcasting our engagement, as I know people don't really care, and I don't want to push my personal life into people's faces. But if it comes up in conversation, I'll happily chat about our plans. And I'm astonished when people are bitter about it, as I wouldn't dare say the same to anyone else if they told me that they were engaged. I don't expect people to be jumping for joy when I tell them, but I also don't want people to laugh in my face and tell me that it won't last. I don't care about other people's opinions of my relationship, as we are completely in love and devoted to one another. But it does get you down when people react by pulling a face and laughing. I also don't feel I should have to hide our engagement just to appease others either. Has this happened to anyone else? What did you say back to people who were rude to you when you announced your engagement? What should I do? It's crazy that people people would be this judgmental towards someone who's getting married. It is so toxic to chime in with some kind of opinion that's based on absolutely nothing other than how long they've been dating. And yeah, the marriage is a little quick in my opinion, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna vocalize that. Literally, this marriage has nothing to do with me, and it's none of my business. At most, you would hope that someone would have at least the common courtesy to just say, oh, congratulations, instead of sticking your nose in their business and saying, your marriage won't last. Like, how weird is that? And it's one of those nasty, nice comments that a person can get from somebody who's pretending to care. Like, when someone comments like this, they don't actually care about your life, but instead they're trying to boil it down into something that it's not and pigeonhole you into a category that does not classify your situation. This person making this toxic comment probably thinks they're being helpful too, when in reality they're just simply being a jerk. So if I was in your shoes, I would stop being nice to these types of people. I wouldn't joke back, I wouldn't even say anything in response. I would probably just say thanks for your opinion and then go about my way, because these people do not define my future marriage. Here's the thing, I don't know how you feel about your fiance, and while I do think that this marriage is definitely happening a little quick in my opinion, it does not mean that it won't be successful. And it sounds like you love your fiance, so don't even worry what other people think. I would say if family and friends act this way, then guess what? They don't have to show up. In fact, if they're this negative towards you, I just wouldn't even invite them to the wedding. People telling you to let them know when you get divorced or saying that your marriage won't last should be a really good tell of if you should even invite them to your wedding or not. But overall, hopefully these people shut up and mind their own business and you're able to get married without any kind of problems from other people, because truly their opinions don't matter and you should honestly just ignore them. My boyfriend hung up on me after I said we should end things and break up, but I'm now really torn because I didn't get any closure out of the situation. What should I do? My now ex-boyfriend and I had a huge argument last night. Basically, we are both too busy to really work on the relationship, and it feels like our dirty laundry just keeps piling up without finding any appropriate resolutions. I have been thinking a lot about how at this rate, this just simply wouldn't work. Perhaps if we had more availability to put more work into the relationship, everything would work out. But the way it is, it just won't. We've been doing long distance from the beginning and have been seeing each other for 3 years. I think over time, I just started to feel lonely because every time I wanted to talk about something, I knew we had only really an hour to catch up. Plus, I know work was absolutely crushing him. Genuinely, he barely had enough time to sleep and to eat. I felt so guilty adding another thing to his plate. In fact, he would often express that I was adding too much to his plate. Over time, I think it was a mix of guilt and loneliness. I knew that it just simply wouldn't work out like this. So last night, at the end of the argument, where we have been running in circles for hours, I told him that, hey, I don't think this is gonna work. He immediately hung up on me afterwards and blocked me on various platforms. I truly love this man and I care for him. Even though I know I had to walk away from this relationship, I think he is and will forever be one of the greatest blessings in my life. But I know I said some hurtful things during the argument and then never really got to end things on a better note. I didn't need it to be perfect, but I didn't want a heated argument where we said things in the heat of the moment and then we were just gone forever. I haven't reached out to him yet, and I don't know if it's even a good idea to reach out at this point just to try and talk through things calmly. He has a lot of really old wounds, so I really just want to let him know that he's a good guy and he deserves so much more love, and that I am not abandoning him because I ran out of love to give. I just wanted us to stop hurting and to stop fighting. How can I ask for closure if that is even something I should do? Should I text him or should I try and talk to him over the phone? What should I do? I think you really need to take the hint and leave him alone. He has blocked you on multiple platforms. In fact, he clearly doesn't want to be with you anymore. You did just break up with him. And sure, it really is an aggressive way to end a relationship for him to suddenly hang up on you and then block you on every platform. But you said it best. He has some previous trauma when it comes to this, and this is probably how he responds. You leaving is probably only adding more fuel to that fire, to be honest. And I'm not saying you should have stuck with him, but I honestly don't think you should be surprised by this response either. But to be completely honest with you, it sounds like you really just want to get the last word in instead of actually talking through this calmly. I don't know why you want to find closure, to be honest. You've already broken up with him. Explaining every single detail associated with it is not going to make things better. Like, that's just going to hurt more. And if anything, it feels like you're rubbing salt in his old wounds. So in my opinion, just leave him alone and move on. I mean, this is what you wanted, right? You wanted to break up with him. And I can tell you from my perspective, I would be very upset and probably furious if my ex-girlfriend was saying, oh, we're breaking up, but don't worry, you're still a great guy. That will literally just make things worse. You're only going to add to this man's misery by doing that. That is not a good idea. Honestly, you got to play your move by breaking up with him, so he got to play his move, which meant he now is never going to talk to you ever again and has blocked you everywhere, basically going no contact. Maybe in some way this makes it feel like he got the last word, but in reality, you've already broken things off. There's nothing left to discuss. To go any further than that and to reach out to him again, in my opinion, would be clearly disrespecting his wishes. He doesn't want to talk to you and he doesn't want anything to do with you, so I really think it would be better for you to just move on and to find somebody else in your life, because clearly this relationship was not working. But hopefully everything works out for you, and hopefully you're able to find a relationship that brings you the happiness that you absolutely deserve. My parents blatantly favor my brother, and I am having a hard time dealing with it, and I'm not sure what to do. I'm a 23-year-old male, and I have quite a scenario which I don't exactly know how to deal with. Throughout my life, I have felt that my parents have heavily preferred my younger brother, who's about 3 years younger than me, over myself. Apart from various compliments on his looks, he has given most of what he asked for, something which I never felt I could do, let alone fulfill. They have been more lenient with him, even with regards to finances. Whenever he asked to borrow money or anything at all, 8 times out of 10, they would give in and give a little bit more than what he asked. I remember they let him make a purchase for an iPad one Christmas with money he had received from gifts, while I was not allowed to do the same thing. They had lent him money for a car, while I was refused any money to borrow from them just a few months prior. They gave him an allowance at the same time that I got one, despite him being 3 years younger than me. And to top it all off, when I got more money, he got more money as well, despite the age difference and the responsibilities. And these are just a few of the examples that I've put up with. On top of this, I had taken the decision to follow my father's footsteps and take on his same profession. Previously, he had tried to urge me to do the same, but once I really made the decision, he started to make things difficult for me. Yes, he let me on board and started giving me things to do as I was still getting my university degree to work in the field. However, it took a long time for him to let me join. My brother, on the other hand, who has no interest in taking on the same profession, was easily allowed into helping around despite doing it for just some extra cash. Now, I know what you're thinking. Things still may seem fair up to this point. However, this is what really infuriates me. When I started, my hours were severely limited, and I had to beg my father to increase hours, as I had just been refused another job, and he told me that he had no money to give me. Later, I got another job elsewhere outside of this field, despite not wanting anything else but this profession. When my brother asked for an increase in hours, when he had not even been there for a month, he was approved. All my brother needed to do was ask, despite me begging for months. When I confronted my dad about this, he said that it's my fault for not asking, despite the fact that there was plenty of evidence suggesting that I did ask him multiple times, if not outright begged him. My brother, on the other hand, never had to find another job until very recently, as he is starting to build up his own profession. He was paid very well from my father, since he was offered so much hours. I had been given the opportunity to help out as much as him when he was given the chance, but it was of course a few years too late. So because of that, my brother has earned thousands of dollars more than I have. And yes, I can get a job elsewhere and still remain in the profession, but my father tells me I won't be employed by anyone else, as they know who he is, and they will assume I will leave their wing to go back with my father. He does not want me to leave his side, but even he has to come offer me quite an unattractive pay for my services now, especially since I'm going to be starting full-time employment. I have absolutely no idea how to digest this, and I think that this has been extremely unfair. Whenever I try to talk it out with my parents, they tell me to not start a fight about things that I should stay quiet about, stating that I will probably earn more money than my brother in the future. I have even been told that I am mentally ill multiple times because I have expressed how unfair this has been to me, as I am quite a driven person and have gone to great lengths to get where I am today. And to be honest, it has not been easy. Is this favoritism towards my brother, or am I just being immature? I honestly feel that my parents don't care much about my life, especially when compared to my brothers, even though I've been the one to set the bar and have achieved more than they had when they themselves were my age. I sometimes think that they are jealous of what I am capable of doing, even academically. Leaving my father's wing and taking my profession elsewhere isn't much of an option, as employment will be hard for me, considering I live in a small country and everyone knows everyone here. My father's argument on being denied a job is quite true, to be honest, despite the great needs for professionals of my qualification. I have a very big desire to follow this profession, and I am extremely driven for it. I really do not want to abandon this path and and start a completely new one just because of my family. I have honestly grown to hate my family quite deeply after all that has happened to me over the years. I cannot understand how they can live knowing I am not happy with what they have done to me, as I have tried to tell them multiple times. They just expect me to live with it when this is very crucial to me. I think that they are incompetent when it comes to dealing with people, and I am certain that they have a very low emotional intelligence. They have never, or very rarely, been there for me, and I don't see them as a support system at all. How am I to take this, and what should I do? I would really appreciate any help I could get, as I am in quite a rut and I haven't been feeling myself for quite a while. This is a worry that has lasted about 20 years. Every little preference given to another sibling of mine, when in contrast, I am rejected by my parents multiple times. It all feels like a stab to the chest. I have now grown into an adult and feel like I cannot keep this up much longer. I need to build my own life. What should I do? This is a really tough situation. I think the original poster already knows this, but your father is sabotaging your career. He is taking out some weird vendetta or jealousy, as you put it, for all the wrong reasons. When in reality, in my opinion, he should be raising you to eventually replace him at his job. I mean, why on earth is he acting like this? And to give special treatment to your brother and allow him to get more hours in a career that he's not even going to go into? That just doesn't make any sense. I can understand part-time work if you're going to college or something like that, or if you just needed a job when you're in between life events, but this guy is actively trying to slow down your career and giving your brother an advantage. They clearly see him as the favorite, and they're completely ignoring your hard work and efforts that have gotten you to this point. And you're right, you can achieve a lot more without your family. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would 100% take that job with another company. I would rather take my chances with somebody else and get a job at another company, despite the fact that your dad is also in this profession, to try and make a name for yourself there. Maybe there at least you would have the opportunity to get your teeth sunk into this profession, because right now it simply does not feel like your dad is willing to work with you, which is completely counterintuitive and so unfair. I also don't think this is something that has to be right away. I think if anything, you could just go with the flow and try and just tough it out with your dad for the time being, only to then use that job to get a better job. I've had to do that. It is very miserable, but you know what? It pays off in the end. So that is definitely an option. I think regardless, you sound like a very driven individual, and whatever you decide to do, I'm sure you're going to succeed, because you've worked very hard to get where you're at, and no one's going to stop your hard work and dedication to your profession. Not even your dad, who clearly favors your brother. My entitled sister demands that I waste $50,000 of my time from my job just so she can get free labor from me with her new up-and-coming business. And once I tell her no, she explodes on me in the worst way possible. Here's what happened. So I work as an accountant at a big firm, and my sister is a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids. I am 27 years old, I have no kids, and I make $135,000 a year in my salary. The way my job works is I get billed out to clients at a specific rate, and then my firm pays me my salary. Being an accountant, I get a pretty good view of all things business related. My entitled sister wants to start a business, which is fantastic. This business will provide some extra income for her, since supporting 3 kids on a single income can be very difficult. So things started to go wrong in February, where I was in the middle of our busy season. This was the time leading up to when all public audits are essentially due. It involves long 12 to 15 hour workdays for months at a time. My entitled sister decided to get her business plan up and running, but of course she needed some help. Because of my busy schedule, I told her that I would not be able to help her until May. But for my entitled sister, this was not a good enough answer for her. She wanted to get the funding for her business for April, so she could start setting up operations in May. She demanded that I work after work for free, building her a business plan, building out controls that I would eventually have to implement, as well as designing business processes, and then getting her the funding from the bank that she wanted for the business. I just shrugged this whole thing off and thought it was done when I said I can't do it. But everything started going really badly once she called my boss. She called my boss, who by the way is a very lovely but serious managing partner, and she actually asked him if I could be given some time off in the middle of the busy season to help her start her business. My boss's number is public on the firm's website, so that's how she got it and was able to call him, but this is simply not okay. My boss came to my office and told me what happened, and told me that if I wanted a vacation, I needed to give more of a notice, and that usually it wouldn't be approved at this time of the year. I was so confused because I didn't request any time off. I had no idea what he was talking about. He then explained to me that my sister had called in again, and that she had asked if I could have some time off so that I could help her with her business. And at this point, I was just fuming. She actually called my work and tried to interrupt what I do. I was taken so off guard, I didn't even know what to say. So I grabbed my phone and I called her up, and I told her to never try and call me off of work ever again, especially not in the middle of our busiest time of the year. After I told her this, she was super angry that I could not help her. So instead, she went to my mom, who's a retired chartered accountant, so that she could help her instead of me. Now, something you should know about my mother is the fact that she is retired and doesn't want to work anymore. That is, unless you are planning on paying her properly for her time. And what she did before retirement is not cheap. Fast forward to Sunday and we're at a family dinner, and my entitled sister brings up the fact that nobody in the family is willing to help her get her business off the ground. My mom then mentioned that she couldn't afford her rate, in a way meaning she didn't want to work because she is retired, especially not for free. I told her that I couldn't take off 2 weeks of my life to get her whole business off the ground, as well as ready for operations in May. Not to mention the fact that this is the busy season for us. I would be able to do it part-time in the spring or summer for opening the next spring, but of course, she didn't like that answer. Simply put, anything but a yes, I will work for free wasn't gonna cut it for her. But I did give her an option, stating that I can sign her through my firm first thing Monday morning, but she would have to pay a $50,000 retainer fee just to get in. At this point, she explodes and leaves, and agreed to have me work on it for free in the spring and summer. I didn't say it was going to be free though, but it is going to be a very heavily discounted rate of $45 to $50 an hour, as opposed to my typical $650 an hour, which my firm charges to its clients. Hopefully though, she'll be okay with that when she hears it. That is so crazy that someone would expect you to work for free, especially since you already have a very high-paying job. Like, you clearly have a skill and you have a tool set that's very important for businesses, and your sister just wants a mooch off of it to try and get free labor. Like, that is simply irrational and just not fair for your skill set. You worked hard to get your job and you worked hard for your salary. And while I totally understand that this is your sister and obviously your family, but that does not mean you have to work for free. On top of that, I'm really surprised that you would even do this at all. If I was in your shoes, there's no way I would go into this without some kind of written contract, as well as being paid up front. Because in my opinion, based on what you've described, your entitled sister is probably going to be a nightmare to work for. It doesn't really sound like she knows what she's doing, and I really think she's gonna have you on a very short leash. But what would you do if you're in this situation? Would you help start up this business at a very discounted rate, or would you expect to be paid the amount that you should be paid? Leave a comment down below, we would love to see it. I made a bad joke to a friend of mine, and now 3 mutual friends have taken her side and stopped talking to me. And now I don't know what to do. For context, back in July, one of my good friends, who's 22 years old and is a female, hadn't responded to a text in a while, so I joked that I was, quote, praying for her downfall, which she thought was funny. So I have another friend, we'll call her Ivy, that's not her real name, who I had been friends with for about a year, and we had been talking pretty regularly while we both traveled over the summer. So same situation, Ivy didn't respond after a while, so I thought I'd make the same praying for her downfall joke and make her laugh. Well, it didn't make her laugh, and I guess she took it seriously, because she unfollowed me and blocked me on multiple platforms. The preying on someone's downfall thing is a common joke on TikTok and Twitter, which we all frequent, and is why I thought she would think it was funny. I have no issue admitting that it obviously wasn't funny to her, and therefore was not a good joke. All that matters is how she received it, not what my intentions were. But it really surprised me that she immediately jumped to cut me off, rather than giving me the benefit of the doubt or an opportunity to apologize. Despite her blocking me, I did try to reach out and apologize on Instagram. That is, before she blocked me there and received no response. Fast forward to now, and 3 of her friends, who I thought were also my friends, have essentially ghosted me. They stopped responding to text messages and unfollowed me on Instagram as well. This is even more hurtful than Ivy cutting me off, because I've known 2 of these girls for 2 years now. It's really hurtful to me that I've now lost 4 people as friends over a misunderstanding that I tried to make right. At this point, I don't know if I should leave it alone or attempt to text one of the mutual friends to tell them that I tried to apologize and I didn't mean the joke seriously, obviously. One of my other friends has said that if they've taken Ivy's side without hearing mine, then it means they were never really my friends to begin with, which, to be honest, I kind of agree with. But it hurts to know there are people walking around thinking I would genuinely pray for someone's downfall. That's not the kind of person I am. I was obviously joking. Should I leave it alone, or should I try and reach out one last time to try and set the record straight? What What should I do? In my opinion, when you lose friends over an obvious and innocent joke, those people were never your friends to begin with. They were just looking for reasons to abandon you, and guess what? You gave it to them. What a bunch of toxic individuals. They were clearly looking for reasons to get rid of you, and they found it and they're running with it. Even if they get to pretend to be offended. Which, by the way, how could anyone be offended by that? That joke is not even that good. It'd be different if it actually had some kind of sting to it or some shred of reality, but in reality, there's nothing there. And it sounds like these are the type of people that no matter what you do, nothing you do is going to be good enough with getting their forgiveness. Because I genuinely think they simply don't care. They probably just don't want you around. And that is definitely a hard truth to deal with, but it honestly looks like that is the case. And I'm so sorry you're going through that. So I would just let this go and move on and find some real friends. Because these people were never friends to begin with, and they were clearly just toxic individuals that honestly you should be happy that you're finally away from. My best friend of 4 years said that once she gets into a relationship, she's going to drop me as a friend. And I really don't know how to react to this. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I have a best friend who is female. We'll call her Kay. That's not her real name. We've been really close for about 5 years now. I'm currently in a relationship with my fiance, who I have known for about 9 years, and she doesn't have a problem with Kay because she knows I've been helping Kay throughout her divorce and just being there for everything in her life because she doesn't have any friends besides me. Recently, Kay's been talking to a guy, and I'm glad she's getting out there in the dating world again, but she text messaged me out of the blue and said, I think if I and this guy hit it off, I don't think that we could be friends anymore. And I'm just kind of stunned because I respect her as a person, and I thought we were so much closer than that. I understand she's putting boundaries out, but I feel like I was nothing to her after everything we've been through, to then pretty much just throw me away like I'm nothing. She puts a sad emoji after that, and I just leave her on red because I'm too stunned at what she just told me. I'm not sure how to go forward, and right now, I don't even want to talk to her. I don't want to make some kind of argument over what she wants, because I still respect her, and if that's what she wants, then okay, that's fine. But I'm not sure how to go forward with this. Even though I have a fiance, I would have never thought that she would just ditch me out of nowhere. I told my fiance about this, and she recommends that if Kay is so willing to drop me that easily, then I should do the same and drop her and delete her off of my social media platforms. I agree because the moment she said she was dropping me, I felt she had lost me as a friend. I don't even want to associate myself with her anymore, seeing now that I'm worth just being thrown away like that. Do I just stop talking to Kay? Should I take my fiance's advice or should I do something different? What should I do? It sounds like your friend Kay is a giant piece of garbage. She probably only kept you around because she got divorced and she was lonely and you gave her attention. Like she clearly did not value her friendship with you at all. Definitely not to the same level and degree that you did. And it's not like you guys were dating or flirting or doing anything nefarious. Your fiance was totally okay with your friendship. She knew that you were being supportive of her and that you were trying to be there for her in her time of need. So for her to just turn around and throw you to the curb like that is really gross. And honestly, it's not something you need in your life. If anything, you now know exactly what she's like and you're seeing true colors quite clearly right now. So I think your fiance's right. I think it's time to disconnect yourself first and say, hey, I really appreciate the good times, but I will not be disrespected like that. And I think that it's better that we're just acquaintances instead of friends. Because in all actuality, this lady does not care about you, clearly. If she's so willing to throw away a friendship like that, even at just a casual level, all over some guy that she wants to date, then that is honestly the best red flag you could have possibly hoped for. My partner acts incredibly childish in public, and it's starting to really bother me, and I don't know what to do about it. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I've been with my boyfriend for about 2.5 years. Today, we are at a very busy and large restaurant with a few of his family members. There were at least 2 instances while at this restaurant that got me slightly annoyed. The first one was when he stood behind me on his way back to the table and shook my chair for about 30 seconds. At least 10 pairs of eyes around the restaurant were looking in our direction. I didn't say or do anything other than force a smile and wait until he stopped. I didn't want to say anything in front of his family members either. The second instance was when he would bang the side of his body against mine over and over again while we were sitting next to each other. And this wasn't in an innocent teasing type of way. It was as if he was a bored child and I was his parent. And this is just a portion of a day's example. He's done similar things in public when it's just the two of us. I just thought I was being too uptight or worrying about what people think, so I just let things slide. But today was a breaking point where I realized there should be boundaries in social settings. I grew up in a family where mannerisms in public are very important. My boyfriend is the type of person to not care what people think. He is one of 2 middle children with 2 younger siblings under the age of 13. He probably sees his siblings once every few months. I am comfortable with all of this in private, and I will join him in these harmless shenanigans most times. However, it's not great to see in public. He has mild depression and anxiety that he takes pills for, so I'm worried that if I do say something, it might really hurt his feelings. It feels like talking about this would be like confronting him about part of his personality, and I'm just not sure how to even approach that. What should I do? I think honestly, however you approach this, you definitely need to talk this out and come to some kind of compromise. Like, I totally understand where you're coming from too. It's probably very embarrassing to see your significant other acting like a child in public. I am personally a firm believer of the fact that there is a time and place for everything. If you're in private with your significant other, be goofy, be silly, who cares? It's just you two and it's just casual fun. But when you're in public, personally and in my opinion, I honestly just try to blend in and not make that big of a scene, especially if it's making somebody really important to me uncomfortable. For me, the last thing I would ever want to do is embarrass my girlfriend, my family, or my friends. And this is aside from some mutual joke or some kind of fun activity that we're doing. Like if I'm at a concert or at a theme park, I'm gonna have fun and I'm gonna be loud with my friends because the general consensus is at that specific social event, you can act like an idiot and it's kind of okay. But if I'm at a restaurant or if I'm in public generally and I'm starting to act really weird by shaking chairs and bumping into my significant other, especially when they're easily embarrassed by those types of things, I'm gonna avoid it. I'm not gonna do that to disrupt them. And it definitely seems like your boyfriend is not aware that he's crossing some serious social boundaries for you in public that you really try to maintain. Everybody's different, everybody has their own perceptions of how people see them, and some people simply don't care how they're perceived by others. And it sounds like your boyfriend is one of those people. But I think having a serious conversation about this really will go a long way in helping you feel comfortable being around him in public. There might just be a chance that he doesn't realize he's doing something that's bothering you. So if anything, you need to tell him outright, hey, this is bothering me and you need to stop doing this in public. It really makes me uncomfortable and I'm really embarrassed sometimes to be around you. And while that's a very straightforward way of saying that, I think something along those lines in a respectful manner will go a really long way for both of you. So hopefully this goes well, and hopefully your boyfriend is understanding of where you're coming from and how you feel. My wife had been texting her ex for 2 years, and she's mad that I'm not over it yet, and I really don't know what to do. First, some backstory. We've been married for 5 years and dated for 9 years before that. Together, we have 2 children. One's 4 years old and one is 2 years old. When it comes to the situation at hand, I've been lurking on some online forums for a while, and I think some of the stories made me paranoid about my own situation, especially when it comes to my spouse, and some of the horror stories that I've read. And so, while she was sleeping 4 days ago, I looked at her messages. And while I know what you're gonna say, this is a complete breach of trust, I ended up seeing a conversation that my wife was having with another man. We'll call this man Tim. That's not his real name. I looked at the recent messages, and the most recent one was him saying hi. A bit before that was a conversation of him asking if he could come over, but my wife said that she had work. There was also a conversation where my wife was sharing a picture of the outfit that she wore to go out that night. In the conversation, he complimented her, and then later in that conversation, asked if she had spent some intimate time with me, to which she told him no. I stopped reading at that point and was puzzled and felt guilty for looking. The next day, I couldn't stop wondering who Tim was. I don't personally know anyone by the name of Tim, and thought that it was weird that someone whose name I didn't even recognize was comfortable enough to try and invite themselves to my house. So with curiosity getting the better of me, I looked again later that night. I had convinced myself that if I looked at the start of the conversation, I might find out how they knew each other, and it would make me feel just a little bit better. Well, as you can probably guess, it didn't. It turns out the first messages were from when our second child was 2 months old, and that first conversation was hard. She was discussing our lack of intimacy and blaming me because I stay up later than her. She asked if he thought she was attractive, to which he responded that she was. He then started saying that she should come visit him, but that they would need to sleep in separate rooms, to which my wife responded that if she did go there, that things might escalate, if you know what I mean. After reading that, I felt sick to my stomach, and I just put the phone down. I didn't know what to do. I later decided that I needed to see the whole thing. I made some silly excuse for her phone, and she said that she'd give it to me later. Now, I'm a bad liar, and I felt guilty for looking. So 2 minutes later, I just went to her and told her what I saw, and then said I want to see the whole conversation. conversation. That's when she said that I can't look at those messages because she had deleted it and blocked him. She said that she had been meaning to do it and it had nothing to do with me wanting her phone. We fought and I yelled. She did apologize for talking about our life with her ex, but went on to say that she only spoke to him because he had reached out first and that she just wanted a compliment to make herself feel better. She also stated that nothing happened between the two of them physically and that she would never do that. She said that she only wants me, that she has no interest in him, and that in the messages, I didn't see he was often defending me when she was complaining about me. We ended that argument with me saying I still love her, but I need time to work out my feelings. Since then, I've put on a happy face for the kids, because if it weren't for them, I don't think I'd be under the same roof as her right now at all. We had one night of just not talking, one of sitting and watching TV together, and one where we argued again, and then I drank heavily. Now today, she is angry at me for not being done with this, and for being too up and down that she doesn't know where our relationship is. I am completely stuck and I don't know what to say or do. I love her, and if what she said is true, I can probably forgive her. But the fact I can't just read the messages where he's supposedly defending me or see that nothing else happened just keeps me stuck in the same situation. The way she's being now makes me feel like I'm the one causing problems. I don't want to break up my family because literally 2 months ago, we were talking about having a third child. Next weekend, we are staying in a hotel for 2 nights without the kids for an event. But now I don't know if I even want to spend time with her in this regard. We still have to go, but I'm worried that it's going to be a pivot point on where our relationship goes. This is all just so tough and I'm not sure what to do. Your wife had an emotional affair. She literally cheated on you in that way. So for her to say, oh, just get over it, is really, really gross in my opinion. She had been messaging this ex for 2 years. How are you supposed to just get over it all of a sudden after a few days? It's honestly not that simple. If I was in your shoes, I'd be just as hurt and devastated. And it's also super sketchy that she decided to delete the messages all of a sudden out of nowhere. Like, did she know you were going through her messages? Or did she finally, all at the same time as you looking at them, decide to get rid of them with the hope that she could just forget this ever happened? I mean, the timing of the events just really lines up with her probably knowing you were looking through them. And in case you're wondering, you are not at fault here. You have every right to be upset. Just imagine if the roles were reversed. If you were texting one of your exes, your wife would equally be as upset at you as you are at her. On the other side of that, I think there's also the possibility that, yeah, your wife was just looking for compliments from somebody else, and it just so happened to be an ex. But even that is super unhealthy. It sounds like you want to try and make this work, and I can completely understand that, especially since you both have kids together. So hopefully things work out for the best for both of you, and you're able to find some kind of common solution between the both of you, because this is not something that you should just forget about and push aside. And hopefully your wife is able to see that. An entitled Karen goes nuts at a local Walmart and tries to run out of the store after robbing me of my phone and headphones. Things got so bad that the police had to show up and take her down. Here's what happened. So my dad and I went to Walmart to go purchase school supplies for the upcoming year. And while organizing our stuff afterwards, I realized that the new backpack that I had just purchased was broken and that I couldn't use it. So we had to go back into Walmart just to try and get the return, which is already not going to be an ideal situation. So me and my dad walk up to the customer service desk to try and get a refund for the new backpack. And while we are in line, we see ahead of us the entitled Karen of this story. She was shouting at the top of her lungs about some headphones that had upset her to some poor employee. My dad knows how bad Walmart can be, so he just stands there and watches with glee. Meanwhile, I just put on my own headphones and watch some YouTube videos to pass the time. Standing next to this entitled Karen was some poor kid, just standing there wishing that his mom would stop acting like this. Only after the full encounter happened, I realized that she wanted some sort of headphones, but they were a very expensive product and Walmart was currently out of that specific type of headphone. And this entitled Karen was simply not having it, as she now begins to start throwing something at the employees. And it was at this point that my dad and I realized that this is about to get really bad really quickly. So we did the smart thing and started to walk away. The entire situation and where it was going was just not worth being a part of, so we thought an escape would be the best option. But unfortunately, we did not go unnoticed, as the Karen saw exactly where we were going. At this point, she turns around and dashes over to me and my dad while we have our backs turned. She even left her child at the customer service desk just to chase after us. I now realize that this entitled Karen had taken notice of the headphones that I was currently wearing, and that has to be now what she was chasing after, because this lady runs over and instead of trying to ask me a question about my headphones or anything along those lines, she instead grabs my headphones off my head and in turn my phone. She rips my phone and my headphones off of my person, and my dad just looks on in shock. The entitled Karen then makes a break for it, and at this point, 3 Walmart employees are behind her trying to chase her down. My dad then takes off and starts chasing after her as well. I was just in complete shock watching this all go down. The next thing I hear is a lot of swear words and a lot of screaming. When I come onto the scene, I see that one of the security guards and one of the male employees had tackled her to the ground, and now she is screaming at the top of her lungs. One of the female employees then goes up to my dad and asked him if these are my headphones. The headphones in question were so mangled that it was hardly recognizable as headphones in the first place. The only way that you could even identify it as headphones was the connection thing you put into your phone. Luckily, she gives me my phone and it only has minimal damage on it. After that altercation, we decided that we wanted to leave and get out of Walmart, but unfortunately, we were key witnesses to something pretty major in the store, so we had to wait and make some kind of statement. The cops eventually show up, and everybody that was hurt by that lady in some kind of way wanted to press charges. And at this point, this entitled Karen doesn't scream or say anything, but instead she just starts spitting on people. So they put some handcuffs on her and put a mask over her face to prevent her from spitting on anybody else. The cops take some statements, and this entitled Karen got charged with theft, disturbing the peace, and destruction of property. At the end of the day, I only got about $30 back to try and pay for the headphones. Needless to say, I don't think I will be going back into Walmart for anything anytime soon. Some people are just absolutely unhinged. Imagine going into Walmart and throwing things around just because the employees as well as the store don't have the headphones that you're looking for. I mean, how crazy can you get? You could literally buy those headphones online and actually get a quality product for once instead of whatever Walmart would have given you. So hopefully if you ever do go back to Walmart, you never have to deal with that entitled Karen ever again. My boyfriend hasn't rejoined the workforce since the pandemic hit, and he is really resistant to going back despite my friendly encouragement, and I honestly don't know what to do. Let me start off by saying that I love my boyfriend so much, but when it comes to this subject, he is really hard to talk to. He gets irrationally defensive and negative. He thinks he can support himself through DoorDash, but has been completely unsuccessful. In the past year, he hardly made rent on time. When I calmly mentioned this to him, he would say things like, "That's not even true. How could you even say something like that?" To further drive the point home, I would show him our transaction history, which showed that he had only made rent 3 times, with me covering him the other 9 times. But then, even with that in mind, he would then double back and say, "Look, I made it 3 times. You can't say that I didn't get it once." But he just completely misses the point and doesn't see objective reality. Now, my once robust savings account is at $0. I found that our local Apple Genius Bar is hiring and thought that this was something he could really be great at. But when I showed it to him, he started ranting about how he didn't see himself there. I have had 3 pretty boring jobs since COVID just to pay our bills. I didn't see myself in them, but the roof needs to be held up. I did what had to be done. Now, my boyfriend knows, and he has said that his defensiveness is irrational, but for him, it's a bad habit, as well as what he would describe as a trauma response. But that acknowledgement does not really help me. This is something that he would do to his mom, and I honestly find it very unappealing, even though I love him very much. I feel like he needs male encouragement, but his father is an absentee in his life. His best friend is a doctor and loves him a lot, and I just know that if I gave him even the slightest clue into how things have been going, he would be mortified and talk to my boyfriend about it seriously. I am sick of bearing the weight of his struggle by myself. I feel like he needs help, and I don't know where to bring it in from. In the meantime, I have to stop buying groceries before I've received an advance payment, and I may even let the Wi-Fi get shut off. I have given him thousands of dollars worth of support, and I'm just fed up. He is a good person, but has a very childlike mental block about all of this, and it scares me. At this rate, he is going nowhere very fast. What should I do? The behavior from this boyfriend is really inappropriate. I completely understand how COVID threw a wrench in everybody's plans in life. It certainly derailed my plans and made things a lot harder, but staying at home and refusing to work is not the answer. If you don't work, your power's gonna go out. You're not gonna be able to pay for water, and you won't have any internet. And pretty soon you won't have any food. Like, you have to work. And it sounds like the boyfriend in this situation is 100% just using his girlfriend. He is not putting in the time or the effort to take care of himself or his house, and that is not fair for this original poster. I'm honestly surprised she has even stayed with him. He has drained her bank account completely, and the original poster has it right. Sometimes you just have to work at a job that you hate just so you can make ends meet in your life. There's nothing wrong with that, even if it's a job that you don't identify with. Most people don't identify with their jobs at all, and they see it just as a means to an end, which is fine. But choosing to not work and putting this much stress on your significant other is completely unfair. Regardless of what you choose to do, I think you definitely need to have a conversation with him, because at this rate, you're going to be broke and you're not going to be able to make rent either. Yes, you've made it 9 times in the past, but if this behavior continues, you're not going to have any money to work with. In my opinion, he either needs to pull his weight or it might be time for you to live somewhere else. Otherwise, this will only get worse over time. Today, I messed up by telling my professor to call me daddy, and boy was that a mistake. So tomorrow morning is my first day of a new math class, and the professor had emailed out an introduction form. It asked things like, what's your favorite song and what should I call you? Well, I had been smoking a little bit, if you know what I mean, and for my own personal amusement, I put the word father down in the latter box. After struggling through the math, which is not the easiest thing to do from the clouds, if you know what I mean, I put down my favorite song and I sent it in. And I didn't have the oh no I messed up moment until a few minutes later. I went back to my emails to try and redo the form, and not only did I find that I couldn't redo the form, I found that the professor was not a guy like I thought. Instead, she was a middle-aged woman. And it was right about this time that I realized what I did, and the negative connotation that this name is going to be geared towards my female professor. You see, up to this point, I had been imagining the title of a Catholic priest. However, I can't imagine that a middle-aged woman is going to take a 19-year-old dude telling her to call him father as a religious reference. And the best part, we're all getting an introduction at the beginning of the class, based on our quiz answers, of course. So I'm aware that I am completely screwed. However, my high brain is telling me that perhaps I'm not completely screwed. I just gotta figure out how to play it off with a Catholic priest joke or something like that. If you were in my shoes and you made this kind of mess up, what would you do to try and rectify the situation? Because honestly, I'm at a loss, and I'm not sure what to do. Talk about making a really weird first impression. If I was a professor and I asked people to tell me what they want me to call them throughout the school year, and someone said, call me father or daddy, I think I would slowly implode from laughter. And you better believe I would call that student daddy for the rest of the semester. I would not let them live that down. That's hilarious. But there is a chance that you've definitely shot yourself in the foot for the rest of the school year. What if this lady does not have a sense of humor? What if she takes this the wrong way and you're immediately in deep water? There's a lot to unpack here. But there's also a possibility where she just doesn't read it and she starts her class like normal and just doesn't even mention it. I personally really doubt that she's going to stand in front of the class and be like, oh, Steven? Yeah, you mean father? This guy asked me to call him father for the school year, so let's do that. I seriously doubt she's going to embarrass you like that. If anything, it's just going to be a normal class like anything, and it's going to be fine. Hopefully, though, this lady does have a sense of humor, and if anything, you could just email her and be like, hey, I wrote down the word father as a joke, and I'm really sorry about that. I was meaning to change it, but I sent it in before I could. And that might literally be the answer to your problems. It's really as simple as that. So hopefully this all works out for you, and hopefully your professor doesn't take it the wrong way. Because chances are she's probably not even going to read it. She's got enough students to deal with, so I seriously doubt she's even going to notice. My boyfriend keeps pretending like I don't exist when I'm talking to him, and it's making me feel less human, and I'm starting to really get bothered by it, and I don't know what to do. First, some background. I recently moved in with my boyfriend of 4 years, as I have just finished my education, and I will start working as a teacher very soon. He is in work at the moment, while I'm in a gap between finishing my teaching training and starting work after the summer holidays. I will start in less than 2 weeks, so I haven't been out of work and my education for that long. I help during the day with prepping meals for dinner, as well as cleaning up, and I'm also doing reading for teaching, as it's not my subject of expertise that I will be teaching. It's law, so it takes a lot of my time and effort, but I do put a lot of love into our meals that I cook, and I try to learn whole new cuisines and seek out special ingredients to make authentic meals for the both of us. My love language is acts of service. In other words, I'm not a bum, and I contribute financially with groceries, as well as the cost of going out to eat where possible, as well as splitting the rent and the bills equally. I will be earning more than him when I start my job, so I will be contributing more once that happens. We have lived together for short periods of times previously, during lockdowns or even splitting time in between each other's places, but this issue only started when I moved in 2 months ago. The last 4 years have been relatively good. I was a bit distant after my younger brother passed away during my teaching training last year, but all things considered, I pulled myself out of that hole and am back to being how things were before. But here's the issue that just keeps coming up. He has started doing this thing where he gets home from work and just doesn't acknowledge me when I ask him for help or speak to him about something like my day. These are things that you would typically expect a response to. For example, I'm pretty short compared to him, and I can't close the vertical window in the flat because the handle is too high up and I'm not strong enough. He will pretend that he can't hear me even when I'm asking him to help me, and despite that it's getting cold in our flat. Sometimes I will be cooking something and need a hand moving stuff off of the table to put it down so I don't burn myself. But he takes so long to respond to me after me asking him multiple times that I either end up overcooking the food or getting close to burning myself doing things one-handed. Sometimes I will just be talking about something that happened or how I feel about some family issues, and there's just no response. This has bitten him in the backside too, as I had tickets to my undergraduate graduation and he didn't take time off because apparently he didn't hear me talking about having them at the time. He got moody with me over this, but this behavior is incessant. He does it all the time when he's on his phone or playing video games. I game too, but I always respond when he is speaking. I have told him many times in the past about how degrading I find it and how I don't feel heard and how I don't feel comfortable, as well as basically given up on talking to him about anything serious. I'm at a point where I don't even feel like I can talk to him about my brother passing away because he refuses to listen to everything else. He's perfectly fine at hearing me when we talk about things that he enjoys, but is completely absent when it comes to me. He has now gotten to the point where he just takes his meals that I make him over to his desk to continue to play his video games. He would just put on his headphones and ignore me sometimes after I've put 2+ hours of effort into our meal. He doesn't seem to understand that this is really rude, but I'm telling him it is, so it really shouldn't still be an issue, right? Plus, this behavior is always accompanied by him having no patience when I accidentally do something like drop something or even close the cupboard door a little too loudly. He would raise his voice at me anytime this happens. It makes me feel like I'm a kid getting yelled at by my mother again, but at the same time, I feel like a mother nagging a child to please help me out because it takes so much to get him to even acknowledge that I exist. Why does he feel it's okay to do this when I have to put up a fight with his behavior as soon as it appeared, and I haven't let it slide? Whenever I feel really low from it, yes, I cry from frustration, and he just tells me off for being too loud and for shouting when it's not actually that loud. He has previously been really good to me, which helped me feel okay about moving in. Like I really felt like he was gonna be there for me when my brother passed away. No one but my boyfriend really understood what I was going through, as he was with me when I found out, which is why I'm so lost why this behavior has started now. I feel like I've been conned almost as I expected the niceness to continue. I mean, like, why now? Most guys apparently leave when something like this happens to their partner, according to the grief counselor that I'm seeing. I'm not a weight on his life. I still have fun. I have taken on things that he enjoys like gaming. I'm listening to the music that he likes. I'm attentive. I listen to him talk about his day and help him with his issues. I cook. I put effort into how I present myself. So I honestly overall don't get it. After multiple Google searches out of just pure frustration, suggested that he might have ADHD, but that's the thing. He doesn't have ADHD. If he did, he would have been diagnosed by now. I just don't know what to do, and I don't have many people to talk to about this. I have been actively trying to find friends in the area, so I don't feel alone, but it's hard. And with all things considered, I honestly don't know what to do. This is really disturbing behavior because your boyfriend is being very neglectful. Like he is not in any way, shape, or form appreciating all the hard work you put into this relationship. And in a lot of ways, it definitely feels like this is a one-sided situation. Like he's more than happy to talk about his day as well as to eat the food that you cook, but when the roles are reversed, he just does not reciprocate at all. He doesn't listen to you at all. He completely ignores you when you need help with something, and he's just overall being very toxic. So it really is heartbreaking to hear that you feel like you've been conned in this relationship. When it comes to me personally trying to figure somebody out, when someone tells me exactly who they are, whether by their words or actions, I'm going to take the stance of believing them and taking it at face value. That is until something proves it otherwise. And at face value, your boyfriend does not care about you. He is not attentive. He doesn't want to listen to you. He completely ignores you and is very ungrateful for everything you're doing. And if anything, he's pushing you aside. And that is not fair for you. I think having a very serious discussion with him and telling him flat out as to why you don't feel welcome in this house anymore would do you a lot of good. Because Because if your boyfriend isn't willing to be your boyfriend, then he's just some weird roommate who takes advantage of you. And in all actuality, you do not deserve that. So hopefully this conversation goes well, and hopefully you're able to figure this out, because the way your boyfriend is acting is unacceptable, and no one should have to deal with that. My girlfriend won't let me break up with her, and I don't know what to do about this. My girlfriend and I have been dating for over a year, and up until about 2 months ago, we had a pretty basic relationship. We had movie dates, prom night, stuff like that. She said that we would get married at some point and have a Disney movie-like relationship. Pretty much the week of graduation, she started to act different. She would start to do stuff like getting mad at me when I hung out with my friends, or if I didn't invite her to stuff, she would freak out. This summer, she hasn't been letting me do anything without her, but she won't let us do anything I want to do. I figured she was nervous about college in the fall, thinking that maybe she thought that we wouldn't have time to be with each other or something like that. She and my best friend really don't get along as well, and 2 weeks ago, she was yelling at him and started throwing things at him. After that altercation, I got really mad, and a couple of days ago, I texted her and I said that we needed to break up. But the worst part about all of this is that she won't let me break up with her. She keeps denying that I ever texted her that, and she keeps asking if I want to go out with her sometime. She has even shown up at my house to ask me out, which is honestly just so weird. She also blames my friend for some reason and is claiming that he's the one who made me break up with her in the first place. I have blocked her on everything, but she's still showing up at my house and has even started texting my friends and my parents. Now things are really weird. How can I get her to stop, as well as to convince her that we aren't together anymore? What should I do? This definitely is a very weird situation. Imagine making the hard decision to say, you know what, we're not good for each other and I'm breaking up with you, only for them to turn around and be like, no, we are not breaking up. We're still together. Let's go out. Like, come on, that's just freaking weird. And worst of all, this lady is literally showing up to your house and trying to act like you guys are still together. Like, no, that's not how this works. This would be like if you quit your job and your manager came to your house and was like, whoa, why weren't you at work today? Like, are you kidding me? I quit my job. Please leave. Your girlfriend has crossed the line, is not respecting your wishes, and has started to become a stalker. I think the next time she shows up at your house, one quick phone call to the police will sort this out really quickly. The way she's acting is inappropriate, and it's not something you should ever have to deal with. If she tries to interact with you, do not engage. It's literally not worth it. And you should tell your friends as well as your family to do the exact same thing. This lady sounds crazy, and you do not need that in your life, especially since you're just about to go to college. Like, come on. So best of luck with that, and hopefully you're able to get away from this crazy ex, because this lady is clearly unhinged, and the further you get away from her, the happier you will be. My entitled father kicks me out of the house the second I turn 18 and destroys all of my childhood possessions. And I honestly could not be more upset. Here's what happened. So I'm the youngest of 6 kids. My parents always made it clear that when I turn 18, you're out of the house. Whether you're off to university, moving, or just homeless. They don't care where you're going, but you are out of their house. They did this to all of my siblings, and what do you know? None of them want a relationship with them. I was 16 when I was the last one, so it was just me and them. Since 5 children from the ages of 54 to 18 didn't want any relationship with the parents, they tried a little harder on me. By that, I mean I was allowed to eat 3 meals a day if I wanted to, but I had to do the meal planning, as well as the shopping and the cooking. My dad ate oatmeal in the morning and granola at night, and my mother ate 1 meal a day at 8 o'clock in the evening and only made food for herself. I was able to get new shoes once a year instead of waiting till my toes and heels were showing. Just little things like that, which were much different than my siblings. But I guess old habits die hard, because when I turned 18 and went off to university, they couldn't get my stuff out of there fast enough. They basically tried to push me to take every single possession and shove it into a dorm room. Not just clothing or books, but my actual futon bed. And yes, as a side note, I didn't get a real bed until I went to university. They also pushed my photos on me, as well as anything and everything they could find that was labeled as mine. Of course, that wasn't going to work, and I told them so. They said, okay, box it all up. So I did, and I put it in their storage unit. Within 1 month, they had taken down the walls of my bedroom to make their living room a massive space. So on holidays, I could choose to sleep on one couch where my dad would wake me up at 4 in the morning, or I could beg a friend for a place to crash. I spent most of my free time at my friend's house because of this. I just felt they hated me being there, and I really did not feel welcome. Finally, I graduated, and my parents split up. I helped them move out, and my boxes were moved to my dad's house. When my grandparents passed, passed, he basically stole all of their money. None of the grandkids got a dime or a single memento, which I know for a fact my grandparents would not have been happy about. And in the end, my dad got $4 to $5 million. So he bought a flashy car and a giant house. At this point, I had 8 small boxes of stuff. It took up no space at all in his place. We're talking tiny, tiny boxes. But one day, he sent me a text message and asked me if I want anything from my boxes. I've recently moved to the other side of the country, and he had years to approach this subject, but never brought it up. But instead of talking about this sooner, he waited until I was 1,000 miles away, after I just helped him move, to then ask if I could get rid of any of my boxes. I asked him to just pop them open, and we'll FaceTime and spend 20 minutes talking about it. So we get that started, and to my absolute shock, none of the things that I wanted were available for me to get. I'm talking baby photos, personal items, clothing. Nothing that I asked for was available in these boxes. He straight up tells me that I wouldn't even want any of that stuff, since a lot of it was over a decade old, and that he put it on the curb for the garbage men to take care of. These were all incredibly sentimental items in my life. We're talking baby photos all the way up until I was a teenager. There were letters from my grandparents and Christmas presents from my grandfather. There were special items, very sentimental things that were just taken away from me. And worst of all, he obviously tossed all of this before asking me if I wanted it. He only asked me if I wanted these items as a formality, because he felt guilty that he had already done it and expected that I would say that I didn't want it. He hates possessions. He has absolutely nothing in his house but a desk, a futon, a bookshelf, a computer, and a camera. I feel so stupid thinking that I could trust this man with any of my stuff after he said that when I moved, he would take care of it. And now I wish I could go back and make room in my moving van for when I moved 1,000 miles away from my father. This is a lesson I've learned the hard way, but never again will I trust that man with anything that is valuable to me. The parents in this story are so unbelievably toxic. Like, they treated their kids like garbage all the way up until they were 18 years old. And even then, they treated them like absolute strangers in their own household. Like, if you hate kids that much, why have 6 of them? Like, that's so ridiculous. Just do yourself and everybody else a favor and don't have any if you feel that way. I mean, you would probably pick up really quickly after the first one if you even wanted to have 5 more. And it's really terrible that the original poster lost all this sentimental stuff to this terrible father. That man is a very toxic individual, and I can see why he got divorced, as well as why nobody wants anything to do with him. He is clearly a miserable human being with millions of dollars. And I think that's just added proof that money really doesn't buy happiness. So while it really is terrible that the original poster lost all of their family photos and everything personal to them, they can at least say that they have officially moved on from this terrible father, because that man just straight up sucked. And hopefully he never has to deal with that guy ever again. My boyfriend has a crush on a coworker, and it's really making me doubt myself, and I'm not sure what to do. So my boyfriend of around 5 years recently revealed to me that he has a crush on his coworker. They both work in the same store and have many similar interests. I am not sure how old she is, probably in her early 20s, and they have worked together for about a year. Nothing physical or romantic has happened, and she likely doesn't even know about these feelings. At first, I was just grateful that he told me, since I definitely suspected there might be some feelings there. He brought it up casually, and we both laughed about it. I was glad we were open about that sort of thing, as everyone does have crushes, even in relationships. And I thought that being open about it was a great way to address these feelings. He said that it would be very difficult to try and shake these feelings, but he is just acting normal around her for now. He mentioned he develops crushes on women very easily, and then finds it very difficult to just pursue a normal friendship. We talked about it a bit more the next day, and since then, I've been really having a hard time emotionally. In the past, when we've talked casually about an open relationship, he has been very opposed to it, and I've agreed that it's not for us. Recently, though, he seemed a lot more open to the idea, mentioning that we have different interests, and hinting that it could be a possibility with the two of us sticking together and figuring it all out together. This talk made me suddenly and extremely self-conscious. It has been hard to relax around him. All I can think about is how the other women he sees are probably prettier. They are always on since they are working together and don't have the same issues that I do. I have discussed marriage and kids with this man, overlooking our differences and interests because he is kind and we love each other a lot. But now I am full of doubt. How could he have such strong feelings for someone and pivot so easily and quickly to an open relationship if he saw me as someone he would want to be with forever? If he develops these feelings so quickly and strongly for every woman he meets, what would our future look like together? I have been feeling him pull away over time time, and though I'm sure he does not want to break up, I'm at a loss for how to handle this crush, these insecurities, and these doubts. I have been with this man for 5 years. We have 2 pets together, we share a living space, and our lives are intertwined in almost every single way. What should I do? This is a messy one, because it's really just not fair for you. Sure, you can develop a crush on a coworker, but if you're a loyal boyfriend, you'll be like, wait a second, no thank you. I'm already with somebody. Like, it does not take that much energy to flip off that switch and say, actually, no, I'm off the market. This guy is very clearly entertaining the thought of getting with this other woman, so he's trying to propose some kind of open relationship, which in my opinion is just cheating with extra steps. He's trying to be like, oh, let's have an open relationship. It's fine, right? No, in my opinion, it's not fine. You have clearly said that you do not want that, and that's not in your best interest. So for him to propose something like that is a big red flag for me personally. And it really sucks because it's all at your expense. Like, what kind of boyfriend would act like that? And don't get me wrong, when you're in a relationship, you can acknowledge how pretty someone actually is, and you can just leave it at that. But in my opinion, to go any further than that and to entertain the idea of, hey, maybe I could get with this person as well, is incredibly toxic and is completely counterintuitive to you having a healthy relationship. So in my opinion, this is definitely a discussion you need to have with him. You need to make your feelings very known very quickly, because it sounds like he's entertaining some ulterior motives. And if you're not careful, this relationship could really see some serious friction. My online date basically tried to use me for career advice for a job interview at my company, and I couldn't be more upset. So I matched with my date on Bumble, and the chat was really good. She saw on my profile that I'm a game developer, and she said that was cool, nothing really else about it, and she seemed interested in meeting up. When we met at the station, she looked genuinely terrified as I approached her. So I didn't really go in for a hug because I didn't feel welcome to do that. I asked her if she was okay, and she said she just has anxiety. I was half expecting us to just show up and have some drinks and have a good time, but she explained that she had just come from work and she was starving. She then said that she fancies Asian cuisine, so I said, sure, why not? She chose a restaurant, we sat down, and then she started to give me a sob story about how she had to drive ages to her local station just to get a long train to get here. And I have to be honest, after she told me that, I felt really bad for her and also super awkward. So to try and help out the situation, I offered to pay for her dinner. I offered and she gladly accepted, and I didn't mind. So I was trying to get to know her, but she kept shutting me down, saying that she didn't like talking about herself and that she would rather ask me some questions. I just thought to myself, okay, we can do that. So she started asking me some questions, and all of the questions that she wanted to ask had to do with the company that I worked for. I politely chuckled, reminding her that I have NDAs and that I can't answer any questions. She then suddenly revealed that she had a job interview lined up next week and was asking me what they would be looking for with a new hire. I was as polite as I possibly could be, and I could not believe that I was in this kind of situation. But I told her that it's not my department that she's going for, so I can't really give her advice. She then continued to press me about what I'm working on, to which I reminded her, I can't tell you. I paid for dinner reluctantly, walked her over to the station, and then she told me that she was having some wisdom teeth removed soon, so she won't be on her phone, which is the most original way of saying that she's never going to call me again. I then walked home and felt annoyed, so I sent her a message saying something to the effect of, it was nice to meet you, but on reflection, I don't think we are looking for the same thing. I'm on dating apps because I want to meet someone in hopes of blossoming into a relationship, but it felt like you were just looking for career advice as well as insider information and had absolutely no interest in getting to know me. You completely discouraged my efforts to get to know you as well. My best advice for you is to maybe ask for advice from people on LinkedIn and not get guys to take you out on dates just so they can try and get you a job. It's super inappropriate. She then responds back and says, I have anxiety and I found your message very hurtful. I've tried LinkedIn, but nobody ever replies. Sorry you feel that way. And I could not believe how entitled she was acting. Personally, I don't want to mess up her chances of a career at my job, but part of me really wants to speak to the recruitment department and let them know about this incident. What should I do? In my opinion, if I was in your shoes and someone had just played me to try and get a free meal and also tried to make me break some contractual agreements not to say what I'm working on, I absolutely would go to the recruitment department. That's so unprofessional, and I would not want to work with someone like that. And I I personally find it hilarious that this person basically said, "Oh, my wisdom teeth are going to be removed. I can't talk on the phone." That's coded message for, "I didn't get what I want, so I'm never going to talk to you again." Can you imagine having that as a coworker, even if it's in another department? How obnoxious would that be? I mean, she legitimately rolled up to this date and said, "Okay, break your contracts. Let's disregard some of those NDAs that you signed." If you don't know, an NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. And when you sign one of those, basically you can't say anything. It is a big deal to break an NDA, so you have to take those very seriously. And this guy could have easily lost his job if he started to spill the beans to this lady he's never met before about the things he's working on as a game developer. So yeah, I would tell the recruitment department like tomorrow. There's no way I would let that slide, and honestly, that's just super unprofessional. Today I messed up by inviting my fiance's grandma to our wedding, and boy did it not go well. So I'm getting married in 2 weeks, and I tried to do this as a surprise. I met my girlfriend when we were in college, around 4 years ago. She went to college out of state, so I never got to know her family much. When we did talk, she only ever talked about her parents. She never mentioned any grandparents, aunts, cousins, anyone. I only saw them through old photos and stories. A week later, we had finished the guest list. My girlfriend's family on the list was her parents and a few cousins. I asked if she was sure that this was all the people she wanted to invite, and she shut down the topic and said yes, absolutely. I know that she isn't very close to her extended family. That night, I went on social media and found an old picture of my girlfriend with her grandfather. I know they both loved each other very much, but he passed away a few years ago. I also found her grandma's social media page, and she was someone that she hadn't really mentioned before at all, but she didn't talk about her grandfather a lot because his death was always very upsetting for her. So I thought that this was probably why she didn't invite her to our wedding. She also has very bad social anxiety and would feel guilty over inviting someone she hasn't seen in a while halfway across the country. So I took it upon myself and I invited her grandma. She seemed very surprised but happy. My girlfriend didn't know anything about this until yesterday when her grandma knocked on our door. I had no idea she was going to be arriving, so my girlfriend answered the door and I followed quickly after her. My girlfriend's grandmother hugged her and began rambling about second chances and wanting to help with the wedding. My girlfriend hugged her back and asked how she was related to her. I thought it was an awkward joke and jokingly asked if she didn't recognize her own grandmother. My girlfriend then immediately pushed the woman off of her and pulled me away to talk to me. It turns out she never met her grandmother. I come to find out that my girlfriend's grandmother had a very bad relationship with my girlfriend's mom and didn't want to be involved in any of my girlfriend's sister's lives while only wanting to stay in my girlfriend's life. It's really crazy stuff. In fact, my girlfriend's family went no contact with this lady when she was only a few months old. When I spoke to her grandmother, she didn't allude to any of this over the text message. In fact, she told me how sad it was having no one around after her husband passed away. She stated that it was hard for her to travel at such an old age. Looking back now, it's now easy to see that she picked up pretty quickly that I didn't know anything and that she used me to get back in my girlfriend's life. I feel so horrible about this, and my girlfriend isn't even talking to me anymore, which I completely understand. But my girlfriend does have a lot of family trauma, and we've had issues in the past of her breaking down at family gatherings. It is a very bad cycle, and she refuses to talk to me about any of it. I really want to support her and help her heal, but she won't even give me the chance. I know that I messed up big time by inviting her grandmother, but I really just want to make things right. What should I do? That is a major mess up. Like, that's horrible. You overstepped the line big time. For me personally, there are family members of mine that I would never invite to my future wedding. There's just no way they're gonna be there. So if my fiance decided, oh, let me invite this one relative that's super toxic to our wedding, I would be unbelievably upset. So when it comes to inviting people to your wedding, you definitely gotta keep things to your side of the family, because there's so many details you simply won't know about your significant other's extended family. Because the last thing you want is for some weird grandmother to roll up at your front door thinking that she's gonna be given some second chance to help plan this wedding. So hopefully things get worked out pretty quickly, because this is definitely a big mess up, and you better hope she doesn't cancel the wedding. My siblings accuse me of being selfish because I didn't want to watch their children on vacation. So my parents paid for a great vacation house in Florida for all of us and my aunt. The only person who's been on vacation in years is my oldest sister-in-law, who went to Florida 2 weeks ago alone. Despite the fact that it was the week of my grandfather's funeral, she went to Florida instead of attending the funeral. They have 4 children, and I had 3 out of the 4 in my care for half half the week she was gone. Anytime we've gone to Florida as a family, I always end up watching their kids. My middle brother and his wife have also had to watch these kids before they had a kid of their own. But here's the issue that really comes into play here. The layout of the house that we would be staying at basically has it where there's 3 bedrooms on the first floor and the second floor has 2 bedrooms, which includes a giant kids room for the older kids, where there's bunk beds and an arcade area. Lastly, the third floor is a suite room with a kitchenette. I have the 2 youngest kids, 3 kids in total. The 2 youngest are babies. And to top it all off, I also have pulmonary hyperextension and heart failure. So taking steps up and down these stairs really take a toll on my body. Now with all of that in mind, here's where the argument came into play. Last night, everyone informs me I have to stay on the floor with all my kids and all of their children, and I was absolutely not having it. It is dangerous for me, and regardless of the stated expectation, it will result in me being a live-in babysitter because myself and my husband are the only adults on that floor. My sister-in-law then asked me in front of her kids, "What is it that you don't like about my kids? Is that why you don't want that floor?" At this point, I get super upset, especially since her children are standing right there. Her comment was just meant to gaslight me and to try and manipulate me. So I get upset and my husband and I just leave. Later, I sent them a text message and I said that they don't get to decide my room. And again, they tried to imply that I don't like their kids or something along those lines. Eventually, both of my sister-in-laws jump in, call me and my husband, basically claiming that we are spoiled, unappreciative babies who are ruining the trip and hurting my mom's feelings. So after that, I snapped. I said to them, "I am done with you guys. None of you wanted that floor because you wanted to dump your kids on me without my consent, and that is absolute garbage, and I literally want nothing to do with you guys." They have done this to me historically multiple times. The implication that I am somehow a horrible human being because I don't enjoy being told where I have to go and what rooms I get to pick, as well as putting me at a disadvantage both physically and emotionally, as well as just using me for a babysitter. And then to have the audacity to imply that I don't love my nieces and nephews in front of them is absolutely crazy to me. Ultimately, my middle brother and his wife said that they would stay on that floor, but commented it was a sacrifice since I was being so immature. But after hearing that, I called their bluff and said, well, if it's no big deal and I'm overreacting, then why is it a sacrifice? Eventually, I just blocked them. I don't know how to fix the situation, and I don't know if I'm willing to. What should I do? With the health conditions that you're dealing with, you should absolutely not have to be somebody's babysitter, all because they want you to and they're trying to force you to. And what that lady was doing was literally manipulation. You got it right. She was trying to imply that you hated her kids, and that's why you didn't want to watch them. And the fact that she did that in front of her kids was just really gross. I mean, what a terrible human being. Good for you for standing up for yourself and putting your foot down, because otherwise these people were just going to keep using you. And this is also a good indicator that next time, if you go on a vacation with them, book your own hotel. These people are just going to try and pawn their kids off on you every single time because they see you as a free babysitter. But hopefully now, after you put your foot down, they will leave you alone and allow you to enjoy your vacation, because nobody should be forced to babysit anybody's kids if they don't want to. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.